Welcome in to another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman with our third straight day of doing a live show. We broke down week one already in its entirety. You can go check it out, the Sunday and Monday live shows. Now, Dalton, we are doing our full preview of week two of college football. Not as many loaded, massive matchups as we had in week one, where we had 3 top 10 games, but still 9 really intriguing games this week.
And you know what I like about this slate? There's only 2 or 3 teams here that we talked about over the past week at all. We get a whole new set of teams. That's part of the, part of the depth of college football and how many good teams, especially early in the season, there are to talk about, right, with these big out-of-conference games. I mean, I think it's just the fun of like, okay, now we get the whole scope of last week. Yeah, we had the 3 top 10 matchups. We had some other big games, some coaching debuts, things like that. But you get a whole different slate of teams this week, and they're all really, really big games when you talk about, okay, some of these teams looking at at-large playoff berths maybe later in the year. Some of these we get some rematches from last year, and they were very consequential games last year. So I think, and honestly, looking at these 9 games and trying to pick them, this is one of the hardest slate of games to pick that I can remember us. I think out of these 9 games, there's maybe 6 or 7 that are honestly pretty close to coin flips.
And I know the last weekend of the year is known as rivalry week in college football, but we have some old rivalries coming back this weekend. Obviously, Cy-Hawk between Iowa and Iowa State. Kansas, Missouri, a rivalry that's been dead for over a decade, is back this year too. So a lot of fun games this weekend. Obviously a big one at night between Oklahoma and Michigan that we'll get to later on in the show. But there is a lot to talk about in this week 2 of college football. And obviously on this preview show, we're going to throw a lot of numbers at you guys. And all of those numbers are available to you guys with a PFF Plus subscription at subscribe.pff.com. You get all the access to all of the same data and grades that every single one of the 136 FBS teams subscribe to, and also every single one of the 32 NFL teams use as well. And you get access to the best fantasy football tools on the planet, the best betting tools on the planet, and access to our 2026 NFL mock draft simulator with over 450 players in that mock draft simulator. Trevor Sicko was a sicko for doing that much work already in September of college football season. So a lot to look at on that PFF app, which you can download right now on Apple or anywhere you get your apps, Google Play Store as well. So lots to talk about today. We got a lot of people in the chat right now. Drake Holiday saying it's ball knowing o'clock. We actually will be talking about his Arizona State Sun Devils here on this show. So we'll be happy about that too. We got Walt in the chat too. Talk about Gabe Akis, the star edge rusher for Illinois. He's a big fan of him. We'll talk about him in the first game too. A lot to get to, Dalton, in this week 2.
No, absolutely. We got a lot of fun matchups, and I think a lot of very even matchups, and maybe even some teams on upset alert this week.
I think so, too. But just to remind you guys, our record going into week 2, Dalton and I are both 7-5 on the year so far in our game predictions. So we're basically a solid college football program right now.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the teams that went 7-5 last year, right? Florida, I think, went 7-5. Iowa went 7.
Michigan.
A couple of teams were featured.
3 teams that we're talking about today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we got a good record. I've done a little better than that in the past. We're getting there. We're getting loose. Week 1 was wild. It's funny because it's like I was telling somebody before, I got all 3 of the top 10 matchups wrong. But then went, I think, 7-1 otherwise last week.
Yeah.
On the games that were a little lower on the scale, I was like, okay, we got a lot of those. It's just those big spotlight matchups really kind of, they tripped us up a little bit. They did, along with Alabama's upset, of course.
Talking about Donnie's Iowa Hawkeyes a little bit, too. He asked, what's Eli's record on the year? Eli doesn't do game predictions, but Eli is 0-for-1 on the upset picks, which we'll do very early on, actually, in the show today, too. So we're excited to get to the upset picks this week. Hopefully we can make some money this week, too. Let's get to the first game that we're talking about, though. That is Walt's team, Illinois, at Duke, which is 12 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. The storyline for me, these are 2 playoff sleepers, I think, in 2025. Illinois currently plus 550 to make the college football playoff according to DraftKings Sportsbook. Duke is plus 1,200. So, yes, Duke has significantly worse odds, but Dalton, you had the Blue Devils in your ACC title game in your preseason prediction. Last year, both teams that made the ACC title game made the playoff too. So Duke might have a shot of crashing the 12-team field, and whoever wins this game has a really good chance at getting one of the 7 at-large spots.
And I'll tell you what, in a very competitive ACC where you're talking about the big win Florida State just got, the big win Miami just got, obviously Clemson's going to be at the top, Louisville, Georgia Tech got a big road win last week. This is a big opportunity for Duke, especially when you talk about that at-large playoff possibility. You're talking about a big out-of-conference game against a ranked team. Yes, it's at home, but Illinois is a very good team with a lot of experience. If Duke were to win this game, both for the quality of their resume and I think for the quality of their football team and what we'd be looking at going forward, they have one of the more favorable ACC schedules. I think Clemson's on their schedule, but there's not a whole lot of tough games. I believe they avoid Louisville. They avoid Miami. I don't remember if they play Florida State. They might avoid them too. So Duke has, I think, a lot of winnable games in conference, but this would be a real statement if they could come out here and win this game at home.
You have Darian Mensah, the new Duke quarterback, and the Duke offense in this one. What you know when they're going up against Gabe Akis in Illinois?
So I think the big thing is what you get from Illinois on defense structurally is just constant aggression, right? It's Akis and that 5-man rush. They're on a 5-man defensive line constantly, and one of the big themes with Illinois is man-to-man coverage. Xavier Scott and those guys in that secondary, very aggressive press man coverage. Last year, the 4th highest rate of man coverage in the country, one of just 4 teams to use man more than zone, I believe about 53% of the time. So when you look at what Darian Mensah is going to be dealing with, he's really never played a defense like this before in the American, or now obviously last week in his first game with Duke against an FCS opponent. And not only do they use it a lot, they're very good at it. Illinois, 26th last year in man coverage grade, 19th in EPA per pass allowed when in man coverage, 39th in completion percentage allowed. I believe just around 53% of their passes they allow to be completed also. So it's going to be on Darian Mensah to make tight window throws. I really like the way he threw the ball last week. Again, FCS opponent, but his first game in a new offense and a more wide open offense. I think what you're really looking at here is the matchup between Xavier Scott and that secondary for Illinois against some of these Duke receivers, right? You talk about Cooper Barkate, the transfer from Harvard, Samir Hagans, you talk about Andrell Anthony, right? I think you just need somebody here to step up who can win those one-on-ones, and Darian Mensah is going to be asked to make some tight window throws. Duke isn't the best running team. I think it could be a problem with them trying to go against this 5-man front. I think Mensah is going to be asked to make tight window throws against man coverage if he's up to the challenge. I don't think he's afraid of those throws, but if he's up to the challenge of making those throws accurately, he's going to need probably at least 3 big-time throws, I think, in this game to make explosive plays on this Illinois secondary that's very good and very experienced. That's what I see as this matchup. Darian Mensah against a super aggressive, press-heavy secondary.
And you mentioned Xavier Scott before. I don't know if you saw, but Connor Rogers on the NFL Stock Exchange podcast has Xavier Scott, I believe, is a top 15 overall prospect in the draft right now.
Which is incredible considering that he's really a nickel, right? He's playing in the slot, and it makes you think about, former Illinois great Devin Witherspoon as well. Is he a player of that caliber? Maybe he is. We'll find out. I think this is a good matchup to find that out in.
Xavier Scott brings it in run defense too. He's an outstanding. He's probably maybe the best run defending corner that we have in college football. My matchup on the other side is how will Luke Altmaier and the Illinois offensive line handle the blitzes from Manny Diaz? Because a trademark of Manny Diaz's defenses, whether it be when he was coaching Miami, whether he was coaching the defensive coordinator at Penn State or at Duke, is how often he blitzes quarterbacks. The Blue Devils last year sent a blitz on 40% of plays in 2024. That was 4th among all schools in the Power 4. That helped Duke have over a 40% pressure rate, which was 6th in the country, despite the fact that Duke was 90th in pass rush grade. So really, they pressured the quarterback at one of the highest rates in college football because they blitzed at one of the highest rates in college football. And Illinois last year struggled when teams sent 5 or more rushers. They allowed a pressure on over 46% of the time against the blitz. That was 112th in the country. And Luke Altmaier, the quarterback, he was only 102nd in the country in passing grade with a 63.1 passing grade when he was blitzed last year with 6 big-time throws and 7 turnover-worthy plays. And it's also worth mentioning that Illinois doesn't have its top, receivers from last year in Pat Bryant, Sakari Franklin. Duke right now is a top 10 secondary with Chandler Rivers leading it. Terry Moore still recovering from a torn ACL from last year too, but still a very good Duke secondary. You see those numbers right there. Luke Altmaier, when he played Penn State in 2023, when Manny Diaz was the defensive coordinator, 40.9 passing grade, 4 interceptions, over a 63% blitz rate. Now, I know the Penn State defense in 2023 is more talented than the one he has at Duke right now. But Manny Diaz has played Luke Altmaier before, and he sent a blitz a lot at him in that game. And Luke Altmaier really struggled against Manny Diaz's defense. If Altmaier and Illinois don't have quick answers in this passing game against Manny Diaz's defense, it could be a long night for Illinois, and Duke has a chance of pulling off a top 15 upset.
It's a very big deal because when you talk about this Illinois team the last couple of years, the pass protection has been the big question. It got better in most of their games, like, with J.C. Davis and Melvin Priestley as their new tackles, and those guys are back this year. But you look at last year, the games they struggled in, right? Penn State couldn't pass protect. When they played Oregon, they couldn't pass protect. The Michigan game was low scoring. They did win because Michigan couldn't score, but obviously they struggled to pass protect. That really becomes a theme here. And, Luke Altmaier, when he's in a clean pocket, he plays like a top, 25 to 30 quarterback. And when he's under pressure is when things really go wrong. We saw that 2 years ago, like you just mentioned, took way too many sacks. Again, not his fault. They just couldn't pass protect. So I think that's going to be a big thing is Manny Diaz confusing this defensive line. But it would help if Illinois can get in the run game on early downs. Caden Fagan, Aiden Lawfery, two really good backs who I think they can balance this thing out with. I'm with you. I don't think Illinois wants to be in too many obvious passing situations. They want to be able to get the RPO game going, get the run game going, stay ahead of the chains. If they get 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 against this Manny Diaz defense and all the looks he can throw at you, it could be a problem.
So, Illinois, who we don't know yet because the AP poll is dropping, I believe, in like an hour, but they will be in the top 15 of that AP poll. Will Illinois win, or will Duke pull off an upset over a top 15 team in Illinois?
This is tight. This is a tight game because it's going to be a hard-fought, gritty, defensive game. I'm going to take the home team. I'm going to take the Blue Devils 24-20. I could even see the score being lower than that. I think this game, and you know me, I'm a big fan of Duke. I think this game comes down to which quarterback is going to be feeling the heat and which one just doesn't make the big mistakes under pressure. We have so much evidence that Luke Altmaier, when he's under heavy pressure, can get into mistakes, right? He can turn the ball over. He can take a lot of sacks. This Illinois offensive line is very often the X factor in their success or failures. Now, I will say we haven't seen that from Mensa necessarily at the top level, right? Now you're talking about a Power 4 game that he didn't have to play with, against at Tulane, and it's really a big moment. It's the first big pressure moment for him here at Duke. But I think at home, what Manny Diaz is capable of on defense, I think whichever team can complement it enough with the run game and stay ahead of the chains, that's really the big thing to me. I think on both sides is which team can stay ahead of the chains, can be in 3rd and 3 instead of 3rd and 8. I think it's going to be a grind. I think it especially could be a very defensive game early in this game, but I like the progress that Mensa's made. I like the way he threw the ball last week. I'm going to take Duke 24-20.
I thought I was going to be the only one that took Duke in this game, and I thought I was going to leg up on you with this one. I also have Duke. I have Duke 21-17 winning this ball game too. I just think Manny Diaz, and I know 2 years ago is a lot different than what it is now. Luke Altmaier's a much better quarterback than he was 2 years ago. But I think that game plan, though, of just how often he blitzes and how bad Illinois' offensive line was against the blitz and how bad Luke Altmaier's been against the blitz, this is a bad matchup for Illinois' offense. I really do think that in this game. I think it'll be a low-scoring game. Again, 21-17 is my final score. I think Duke's going to pull it off. Also, it's at Duke in Durham is a big factor, too, for me in this one. I think Duke will pull it off and pull off a major upset and deliver a huge blow to Illinois' playoff hopes this year.
And if Mensa has enough time, some of the throws that I saw him make last week, again, very, very low opponent, FCS opponent last week, but some of the throws, if Mensa has enough time in the pocket, 2.5 to 3 seconds back there against what's very often a 5-man rush from Illinois, a much more standard one, deep crossers, deep outs against single coverage, corner routes, just different things that get going horizontally in this passing game that Mensa's very comfortable throwing. If he's on the other side, it's the same thing. If he's got enough time in the pocket, I think he can absolutely make throws that can beat that man coverage. It's really, this game is going to come down to pass protection, I think, on both sides, because you don't want to be throwing balls into tight man coverage under pressure. If you have time to be able to do so, then you can do it. You can get the ball placement going. But I think this game does come down to pass protection. I'm going to trust Mensa to make those downfield throws.
So apologies to Walt for picking Duke over his Illinois Fighting Illini, but it should be a whale of a ball game on Saturday. And 71% of the people in the chat pick Illinois -3. So they disagree with us right now.
Dangerous number, because this very well could be exactly a 3-point game. It's going to be a tight defensive game. I think you're going to see a lot of the defensive talent in this game flash.
Another 3-point spread that we have is the next one at noon. Baylor at SMU, again, noon Eastern time on the CW network. Storyline for me is, can Baylor bounce back and deliver a major blow to SMU's hopes of returning to the college football playoff? So Baylor last week opened a season with a 38-24 loss to Auburn on Friday night. The Bears had serious issues stopping Auburn's rushing attack. They allowed 321 yards on the ground. Now, these first two games for Baylor, the Auburn game, the SMU game, they won't affect their standing in the Big 12, which ultimately, if Baylor's going to make the playoff, it's going to have to win the Big 12, I would imagine. I don't think they're going to get an at-large spot. But still, it's a good barometer for Baylor to see where they might stack up in that wide-open Big 12 conference right now. They're trying to bounce back this week on the road against SMU, a team that made the playoff last year and is right now a top 25 team too. They hope to crash the playoff once again in 2025. But really the storyline is, can Baylor bounce back, and SMU looking to show, hey, we are still a playoff contender this year too?
Absolutely. It's a big game for both. And SMU, look, again, does this affect their standing in the ACC? Not necessarily, but we saw last year that, some big out-of-conference wins and you get the momentum rolling and you can put yourself in at-large positioning the same way as Duke. This is a huge game for them, right? If you eventually, let's say you end up second in the ACC again, and in SMU's case again, then you put yourself in position if you're 11-1 or 11-2 to at least be under consideration for that. It worked last year, but this is a huge game for both teams. And I think for Baylor, just for the morale and the feel of the team after last week, they got physically dominated against Auburn last week. They need to be able to bounce back and go, okay, we can take that punch in the mouth, we can win a big game, and then get into Big 12 play feeling a little bit better about yourself as well.
Absolutely. So you have Sawyer Robertson, Bryson Washington, and the Baylor offense against SMU's defense in this one. What should we know about this one?
So we talked so much on Sunday when we reviewed the Auburn-Baylor game about how much Auburn's offense physically dominated Baylor's defensive line. Let's turn this over to the other side now, because this is something we didn't talk about too much. They got dominated on both sides of the ball in the trenches. And yes, Sawyer Robertson has to be, he's got to be a little bit more accurate, right? They need to get to running the ball more. But at the end of the day, this Baylor offensive line needs to play better as well. They got beat in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Keldrick, Falk, and those guys for Auburn are really good, and they won the battle in that game. Baylor's offensive line last week as a unit, 57.4 PFF grade, 51.4 pass blocking grade, not good at all, and Sawyer Robertson pressured over 38% of the time. 62.2 run blocking grade. Max, Baylor only ran for, excluding sacks, 80, I believe it was 83 yards last week. Only 11 of those yards were before contact. So they just were not finding any creases in the run game. And one of the things that shocked me too, I don't take out sacks because we do it the proper way here. Sawyer Robertson didn't have a carry last week. And down the stretch last year, I felt like he was kind of not maybe the main rushing threat, because you had Washington and you had Dawson Pendergrass, who's out for the year this year. That's unfortunate. But I felt like Sawyer Robertson was at least a threat as a runner. And that just never happened last week. And I just think this Baylor offensive line, I was looking at this. So their 6 highest graded games up front last year. They won all of them. And then the other 7, they went 2-5. So really, I mean, I know it's flashy. It's Sawyer Robertson, it's Bryson Washington, it's Cole Wilson, Michael Trigg, Josh Cameron, all the athletes that they have. That's great. But if you can't block anybody, you don't win ball games. And I think that really is the case, because especially in the case of Robertson, you don't want him making throws under pressure, because the accuracy goes. The accuracy comes and goes with him, especially when he's throwing off his back foot and he's throwing off balance. We saw that last week, and they have to run the ball better, because I'll be honest with you, any game, Sawyer Robertson, whoever, any game where my quarterback's throwing the ball 55 times, I'm not in on that. That shouldn't be more than 40. They can't throw it 55 times and win.
And for a Baylor offense that has a top 15 running back in the country, in my opinion, Bryson Washington, you got to be doing a lot better in the run game there.
Absolutely. You can't finish a game with just 83 run yards, right? So I think the other thing, too, now is I'm curious to see what SMU's defensive line looks like against a better opponent. They were good last week, again, an FCS opponent, but you got good players. You got Cam Robertson. You've got Jeffrey Emba. You've got Wu Spencer, Ja'Kai Lang, Terry Webb. This a deep defensive line with not a lot of household names. I don't know if it's as good as Elijah Roberts and Jared Harrison Hunt, the crew they had last year that was one of the best run defenses in the country, especially. And that you've got obviously the great safeties returning. I like SMU's back 7, but this Baylor offensive line that struggled last week against a relatively new unit for SMU, this is a very interesting matchup to me, because if they lose this matchup, especially in the run game, and they struggle to run the ball, then they're in real danger of losing this football game. They need to be better. I know on both sides we're going to talk about this a lot with Baylor, but they need to be better up front before we even start talking about, okay, Sawyer Robertson and his errors and the receivers and Bryson Washington, all of that stuff. If they're not better on the offensive line this week, they will be in serious trouble because this SMU unit is sound.
Absolutely. So my match on the other side of the ball, I know Baylor in week 1 against Auburn, their defensive line got dominated as Auburn ran for over 300 yards. But I'm looking at this game. Kevin Jennings, the star quarterback for SMU, against Baylor and their too high shell. So Kevin Jennings entered this year as a top 10 quarterback in the country for us after a really good debut season as a starter for SMU last year. He was 10th in the country with an 85 passing grade last year. He especially punished defenses that ran cover 0, cover 1, cover 3, essentially 0 safeties or 1 safety on the field. 87.2 passing grade in those situations with 0 safeties or 1 safety. That was 10th in the country. He was far more average when teams played cover 2, cover 4 quarters, a lot like that. 75 passing grade, 43rd in the country, 5 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays. And you see right there, Baylor used a too high shell 73.5% of the time last year, one of the highest rates in the country. They ran quarters, cover 4, 50.5% of the time, which was 3rd in the FBS. And Dalton even saw it in the Auburn game. They were playing so much quarters, afraid of Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton Jr. beating them deep, that it hurt them in run defense, and they kept playing quarters the entire game, basically. So I'm looking at, okay, Kevin Jennings, who is excellent against 1 high or 0 high, against 2 high, he's far more average. And Baylor, like I said, runs one of the highest rates of 2 high defenses in college football. That's going to be the big matchup for me on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I agree. And look, and one of the things I kind of took a grievance with last week with Baylor playing that much too high was that Auburn was running all over you. You got to bring somebody up and help out and run support, especially with Jackie Marshall out. Now, this week it might be different. I think I'm more of a fan of, like you just mentioned, staying in those deep shells, staying in those quarter shells, staying in too high looks, because this SMU offense, they want to run with tempo and they want to get vertical. We know Rhett Lashley. We've seen it for years. Rhett Lashley wants to get down the field with his passing game, and we've seen also when that isn't available, Kevin Jennings has struggled in those moments. There have been times where he starts improvising and then he might throw balls into a tight window where maybe you don't necessarily want that. So I'm looking for the balance of that between A, does Jennings feel like he's forcing it into those coverages, and B, I want to see SMU run the ball, right? Brashard Smith's not there anymore. You've got TJ Harden, you've got Chris Johnson, you've got Derek McFall. They're kind of rotating these running backs. It's not just one guy like it was last year with Brashard Smith. Obviously, Jennings is a capable runner himself, but it's a different style of offense than Baylor saw with Auburn last week, where it's very downhill. This tight ends, Jackson Arnold was so heavily involved in the run game. Jennings doesn't usually get that heavily involved, like in the same style that Arnold did. But I think I'm more of a fan of Baylor's defense and that approach this week against this SMU team. I'm with you on that. I'm curious to see how much SMU can respond with the run game, if they can, in the same way that Baylor did last week.
Yeah, I don't think
Auburn did last week.
Yeah, I don't think SMU's run game is as strong as what Auburn's was going into with Auburn's offensive line and Jackson Arnold and their running backs. But Kevin Jennings is the star of the show on the offense, but like I said, he's pretty average against 2 high shells. So with Baylor's defense running that amount, over 70% of the time last year, and a very heavy amount in the Auburn game too, it's going to be interesting to see if Kevin Jennings can have success against Baylor in week 2. All right, Dalton, will SMU win against Baylor at home, or will the Bears get back on track and deliver a big upset victory over the Mustangs?
This is a tough call, because I think you're going to have a Baylor team that really does not want to start their season 0-2. And SMU obviously would be a big win for them at home. SMU, the one thing for me last week, and I know it's sometimes funky with such wide scores and you're playing FCS teams and you're really beating on teams sometimes that you're just more talented than. I don't think they played that well last week. I don't think it was spectacular, especially offensively. I think there's some matchups here. I do think Baylor's offensive line can play better against this SMU unit. Now, I think SMU's got good players up front. I think it's a very competitive matchup. They don't have a Keldrick Falk and some of those guys that Auburn has, those SEC caliber players. So I think Baylor's offensive line could play a little bit better. I like the approach they bring on defense. I think SMU really needs to run the ball in this game. They need to have balance in this game to have success. And I think, one thing for me, and maybe Romello Brinson got away out at wide receiver on one deep ball last week. I think Chris Johnson is probably the running back with the most speed. I don't know that this SMU, I need to see it against a better opponent. I don't know if this SMU offense has a ton of speed individually, right? Obviously, they run the entire operation at a fast tempo. I don't know if the players have a ton of speed. It looked kind of, even last week against an FCS team, kind of methodical at times to me. And I think against this Baylor team, it really helps to have guys who can make those explosive plays. We saw that from Auburn. So I think we get a high-scoring game here. I think Baylor bounces back. I'm going to take the Bears 34-30. I think there's a lot of different ways this game could go, though, because Jackie Marshall right now looks like he's questionable at best. I don't think he's practiced yet this week as of us recording this.
Defensive tackle, yeah.
The high ankle sprain, he's their best run defender. Dave Aranda has basically said if we don't have him, we really got to get creative with our run defense. That would concern me if Jackie Marshall's out big time up front, because, again, I think SMU, I don't think this is the game and the defense against Dave Aranda that you want Kevin Jennings to try to carry you and try to make all the plays, because we know sometimes that can work. And we've seen some other times with Kevin Jennings where there's some bad stretches too, putting the ball in danger. So I'm going to take Baylor. I think they're a desperate team. I don't think SMU is quite as good as Auburn, especially in the trenches. I think they just find a way to win this one in what I think is a pretty high-scoring game.
I can't believe that we are both going with two upsets to start, because I really thought when I put together my predictions, like, okay, I'm going to have Duke and Baylor, and Dalton's probably going to pick the other two, and I also have Baylor. I have Baylor 28-27. Should be a great ball game. I think Baylor's run game will have more success this week against SMU's new-look defensive line. And Kevin Jennings makes a couple of mistakes against Baylor's two high shells, too. So I think the Bears will rebound from their season-opening loss to Auburn with a very close victory over the Mustangs. And, yeah, both you and I, Dawn, because SMU currently is number 16 in the AP poll. They might actually jump into the top 15 in about a half hour when that comes out for week 2. We both have two top 15 teams losing to unranked teams right now.
Yeah, it's tough because SMU, they're top 15, 16 because of last year, but there's a lot of new pieces there, right? They lost a lot of key pieces, and that's the hard part to project forward. But I think it just goes to show you also 7 of these 9 games that we're previewing today, one score spreads.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like 6, if not all of those, are really close to coin flip games. I think this is another one. I think you got a great football game in your hands down there.
All right, so we both have Duke beating Illinois. We both have Baylor beating SMU, two teams that are currently ranked in the top 20, could be the top 15 in about a half hour. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I can't believe that we both picked that. I was actually hoping that I could make up some ground on you with my two upset picks.
I was very in between on it.
So was I, yeah.
It's incredibly close. If Baylor is not better in the trenches, then they'll lose that game. And SMU's defensive line fascinates me because I don't think they have the star power they did last year, but there's a lot of solid players, and they got a deep rotation of solid guys. If they can win that battle up front and they hold Baylor to less than, say, 110 or 120 on the ground or so, SMU could very well win that game, yeah. Kenny
Porter's right hand in the chat, big SMU fan, I believe, saying SMU's going to win by 10. In that one.
Could
happen.
I would not be shocked by basically any outcome in that game.
It's going to be really fun.
I'm telling you, that's a fun one.
Walt asking, is Baylor and SMU really in the mix for the playoffs? I think absolutely. SMU's right now ranked number 16 in the country for a 12-team playoff. They made the playoff last year. And Baylor, like I said, that Big 12 is still wide open. So anyone can win that Big 12 right now. I think Baylor is absolutely still in the mix too. So I think, yeah, both these teams are still in the mix, absolutely.
If you were at least capable in any of the 4 conferences, if you're at least capable of being in second place, of making your conference title game, you're capable. You have a shot to make the playoff if you're at least capable of that. And we saw SMU do that last year, obviously. And Baylor, a lot of people think, even so, with the loss to Auburn, a lot of people think they're still a dark horse in the Big 12.
All right, Donnie's saying we know what time it is because next up is his school, the Cy-Hawk rivalry, Iowa at Iowa State, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. Can Iowa State keep it rolling against its biggest rival? So Iowa State right now is one of 4 teams in the country with a 2-0 record because they beat number 17 Kansas State in Ireland in week 0, and they beat an FCS semifinalist from last year in South Dakota in week 1. Because of that, you can argue Iowa State's been the most impressive team in the Big 12 so far this season. They look for its second straight 3-0 start this week against Iowa in the annual Cy-Hawk rivalry. It's a game that Iowa has historically dominated, winning 47 of these 71 games between them. However, Iowa State has won 2 of the last 3 matchups including last year's game, which was a 20-19 thriller that we had. So Iowa State looking to keep it rolling, and Iowa looking for revenge after last year.
What was it? Was it a 60-yarder that Kyle Conradi hit to end the game last year? And you had the big Jalen Knoll catch over Sebastian Castro, and Iowa State last year. Just such a scratch-and-claw victory. I believe they were down 10-0 in that game. Iowa was dominating early, right? And then Iowa State just found a way, right? It's Rocco Beck gunslinging. It was Jaden Higgins. It was Jalen Knoll. Jalen Knoll had a massive game last year and just found a way to do it. And as always, Iowa State's defense kept them in it. So, look, these games are always close because of just how much these two teams hate each other and how good the defenses are.
So you have the Iowa State offense in this one with Rocco Becht playing pretty well so far through 2 games. What should we know when they're going up against a great defensive coordinator, Phil Parker?
So we got to take a broader look at Iowa State's offense because last year all we talked about all year, right, was Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll and these 2 receivers, and these are the guys that win them ball games, right? Well, those 2 are gone. Obviously, we've talked about it 100 times already. It's going to be different at Iowa State. It sure is different. Let me give you an Iowa fact first, okay? 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 back. Iowa had the highest usage rate in the country last year, right around 70%. Right?
That's not shocking at all, by the way.
Not at all. And I'm going to tell you a lesser shocking thing. Iowa this year is second, and it's early, but they're going to be at the top. Second in the country. Who's the one team they're behind? Take a wild guess in this preview.
Is it Iowa?
It's Iowa State. Iowa State's number 1. They're running 12 personnel on 73% of their plays this year, okay? They have, instead of centering it around 2 wide receivers like they did with Higgins and Knoll last year, they're centering the entire offense around Ben Bramer and Gabe Burkle. These are the guys. Iowa State's, we've charted 144 offensive plays this year, okay? Take a guess. How many plays have they not had multiple tight ends on the field?
144.
Out of 144.
It's got to be like at least 20 or 30.
4. They have run 4 plays through 2 games with 1 or fewer tight ends on the field.
That's nuts.
They are just running this completely. I'm sure Max Toscano's absolutely loving watching it. Mm-hmm. They've gone to this completely tight end centric offense around Bramer and Burkle in their passing game. Those are the guys getting the explosive plays right now. They're hoping for complementary pieces at wide receiver right now, like Dom Overby, right? And you're Edskelson. I think you're talking about, though, this team. They want to run the football. They're messing around with formations. And Bramer and Burkle, they're both good enough to flex out and put them wherever you want, right? You're talking about an offense, 73% usage. 77.6 team offense grade in 12 personnel, 6.8 yards per play, 10.3 yards per pass. So what it's doing is it's allowing them, and look, they've got an offensive line that sometimes we question, but they're finding ways to run the ball with Hansen and Sama, right? And now you're talking about finding explosive passing plays in weird formations with defenses in base personnel with extra linebackers or 8 in the box and all that. They're finding ways to beat teams different ways because they don't have the wide receivers like they did last year. So are they going to throw 4 wide receivers out there? No, they're not going to do that. They don't have Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. They're beating teams with tight ends. And Rocco Becht's really made a nice adjustment to this style of offense. I'm curious to see how Iowa handles this because it's so much different and we're so used to Iowa with the way Phil Parker runs his defense of locking down these spread offenses, right? They're so good at not giving up explosive plays. But it's almost like Iowa State now is getting old school. And we're going to see if Iowa's going to do it, if they can do it with them, right? And how often they're going to get out of that big quarter shell that they had to play last year with those receivers. It's a weird schematic adjustment. But right now, Iowa State, they're running their offense through the tight ends this year instead of the wide receivers.
So they're averaging 2 plays per game without 2 tight ends on the field.
That's it. They've run 4 out of 144 plays. They've had 1 or fewer tight ends.
At least Iowa is used to it in practice, looking against it every day.
Oh yeah.
So they know what to do. It's personnel.
Nothing, but Iowa State can actually throw to them.
It's true. That's true.
That's a whole different story.
Well, my matchup to watch is, can Iowa State win up front against what looks like another elite offensive line for the Hawkeyes? Iowa's entire offense, it's centered around that offensive line. They entered this year with my number 6 offensive line in the country, and they looked the part in their 34-7 win over Albany in Week 1. All 5 starters earned 80-plus PFF grades. Look at that, Dalton. 97.5 offensive line grade.
That'll do.
For Iowa in Week 1. They were also the only offensive line in America with 90-plus grades, both in pass protection and run defense. It was the biggest reason why Iowa had 322 rushing yards in the win. Now, I get it. It's Albany. Albany's an FCS school. Iowa State's a much better defense than that. And despite running a defense, you mentioned this before in the Kansas State game, 3 down linemen is a 3-3-5 defense. However, Iowa State has been very successful against opposing rushing attacks this year. Kansas State, who normally runs the ball at a very, very elite level, they only had 117 rushing yards against Iowa State and Ireland in week 0. South Dakota only had 82 yards on the ground against Iowa State. So less than 200 yards the entire season so far for Iowa State through 2 games, too. Now, the pass rush is a different story for Iowa State right now. They currently have the second worst pressure rate in the Power 4 at only 17.7%. If Iowa State can win up front with big Dominique Orange there and force Mark Gronowski to throw into the teeth of this really good Iowa State secondary that they have with Jontez Williams back there at corner, I think the Cyclones have a distinct advantage on defense. But if Iowa's offensive line wins up front and doesn't force Mark Gronowski to win as a passer in this game, and they can make him be a complimentary quarterback and really rely on the ground game, that's the avenue where Iowa can win this ball game.
Look, and it's great to run the ball all the time. That's fantastic. But Iowa also Mark Gronowski only threw for 44 yards last week. Yeah. So we know, as always, Iowa wants to win with the run game. And the difference between playing in Iowa versus playing at Kansas State. Kansas State, it's shotgun, it's option, it's gap schemes, it's Avery Johnson flying all over the place. Iowa's run schemes are very simple. Tim Lester's going to get under center. They're going to run mid and outside zone, and they're going to get behind Big Jennings Dunker on the right side, right?
Top 10 prospect in the draft corner, Trevor Sycamore.
I think he has him 9th overall, whether it's guard or tackle or wherever. Right now, he's Iowa's right tackle, and he's a big monster. Logan Jones in the middle against Dominique Orange. That's one of the best matchups you're going to see all weekend. It's a different approach, and Iowa ran for 211 yards in this game last year. Caleb Johnson went crazy last year. Now, Johnson's gone, but you have Xavier Williams. You have Kamari Moulton. Gronowski is an athlete. He's a rushing threat himself if he wants to scramble, get the bootleg game going, anything like that. So I think we know Iowa State. Look, they're going to focus on stopping the run here. You have to. You're playing Iowa. That's how this works. But against this offensive line that, throw it out there, I picked them to win the Joe Moore Award this year, and they're off to a pretty darn good start, I would say. I know it's Albany.
Better than me with Alabama, so yeah, great pick.
I'll take it. I'll take it right now. But I mean, it's the obvious. As it's been for how many years or decades now, make Iowa throw the football.
Yeah.
It's just not that easy, though, when you have that brick wall up front.
Yeah. Iowa's always had an elite offensive line with so many legendary players coming from it, and they look like they have another elite offensive line in 2025. So, Dalton, in the third and final noon game that we're previewing, it has been a 3-point spread in all 3 of these ball games, and both you and I have taken the underdog to outright win both of those ball games so far. Will it be a third straight one? Are you taking Iowa to win outright, or will Iowa State win?
And you know this game's going to be extremely close. I mean, it's these two teams. It's always extremely close. The defense always wins the day on both sides. But I'm going to go with the home team and the favorite here. Iowa State 17-13. I just think when you're asking, and again, two teams, I think even two teams that want to run the football. I think Carson Hansen, Abu Sama, they're going to play big parts in this game for Iowa State. Obviously, it's going to be a grind. Both teams are going to be plodding 4 yards at a time here. But if you're asking me at the end of the day, just like it happened last year with Rocco Becht, which one between Becht and Gronowski am I going to trust to make the throw when it matters most? I'm going to trust Rocco Becht. I think they get just enough done again to beat Iowa State. 17-13, defensive, ugly, low-scoring game, as it often is between these two.
I also am taking Iowa State in this one. I have it 21-17, the final score. I think the Cyclones perform just well enough in run defense to win this ballgame, and I agree with you. Rocco Becht to make just enough throws against Iowa's defense for the Cyclones to take home the Cy-Hawk Trophy for the 3rd time in 4 years. So I have Iowa State 21-17 over Iowa.
What does Donnie have? Did he put his score in there? I'm sure it's Iowa 30-0 or something.
He goes, "Come on, man, boo!" Noted, by the way. I need a score from Donnie if he gets a chance.
Throw us a score in the chat there, Donnie. I'm sure he's going to say 35-0.
He probably will. Gronowski goes for 500 yards. Yeah, he'd probably say that.
What a turnaround that would be. Talk about bringing up an average.
So before Donnie throws his score in the chat, we got to do our upset picks of the week. We're doing a lot earlier here on this show, but we want to get to them really quickly now. This PFF betting segment is brought to you by DraftKings. So a reminder, we are doing an upset pick. We're picking an underdog to win outright. That is not one of the 9 games. So it can't be Duke and it can't be Baylor either. You got to pick something outside of these 9 games as your upset pick of the week. And we're keeping score throughout the entire season because whatever the money line is for that school, if they do win, that gets added to your point total. And, of course, we'll have a champion at the end of the year. Eli, our producer, is the defending champion. You came in second place, Dalton. I came in third place last year. None of us hit our upset picks in week 1, so we all still have 0 points so far, but we're going to try to change that in week 2. Want to start off with Eli with his first upset pick?
Absolutely. Let's let him have it. He's still the champ, and until we get somebody that wins one of these one week, then we'll keep going with Eli first.
All right, Eli, what do you got?
Damn straight I'm the winner. So this week we are going Ohio over West Virginia plus 130. I was looking at it last week. Again, Timothy Chalamet's favorite player, Parker Navarro, kind of went off against Rutgers. 89.7 overall grade, 3 touchdowns, 239 yards. So I love that. And if you look at it, West Virginia's weakness, they had a great run defense last week. They're not so great at pass rush and coverage. So I think home dogs, give me Parker Navarro and OU to pull it out.
That was my next choice before I made the pick that I'm actually going to reveal here in a second. But that's a dangerous game for West Virginia. It's at Ohio. It's in Athens, so Ohio's got the home field. Parker Navarro, like Eli mentioned, was spectacular last week. A 3-point loss at Rutgers. And two things. One thing Eli mentioned there, I absolutely love. West Virginia's secondary was a major struggle last year. If that continues,
5th worst coverage grade in the country.
That could be a problem against Navarro. And the other thing, too, is when you watch that Ohio-Rutgers game last week, I felt like Rutgers won that game because Ohio couldn't cover their receivers, Ian Strong and those guys on the outside. West Virginia not as loaded at wide receiver. I think Ohio can keep up in run defense. Now, maybe that's not the case. I mean, West Virginia ran for almost 400 yards last week on an FCS team, but if you keep them relatively, in that reachable 200, low 200s mark in there, and Ohio's run defense keeps them in this game, I don't think West Virginia is as dangerous on the outside as Rutgers. I like Parker Navarro a lot. I love that pick, Eli.
All right, I love that pick too. All right, what's your upset of the week?
All right, you're going to be mad at me? You're going to be real mad at me.
What are you doing?
Do we have confirmation that Max Toscano is watching this?
I don't know. What are you doing?
Syracuse started 0-1.
You can't be doing this to me right now.
Syracuse started 0-1.
This is cruel.
I know.
Because we are doing a parlay every week of all of our picks. You're making me bet against my alma mater this week.
They got a home game against UConn, which maybe the casual folk might think, they'll bounce back. They'll bounce back against UConn. It was Tennessee's just better than them. Give me Jim Mora and his UConn Huskies. Right now, I think they're a 7-point dog against Syracuse. Give me them to go into Syracuse. Syracuse, Steve Angeli and that offense. I got to see it. I got to see it happen a little bit. I think Yassine Willis at running back I like for Syracuse, but that defense worries me. That worries me, especially their run defense. And UConn, as our good friend Max Toscano can tell you, they put on an outside zone clinic every week. And I like their run game. Joe Fagnano's a veteran quarterback who's been there for a while. UConn, I believe they won 9 games last year. They were really good last year. UConn Huskies, going to Syracuse, going to the Dome. Let's get an upset, plus 225.
You suck,
I'm in on it. And there's a lot of money going on UConn right now. That started as like a 9.5 or 10. It's down to 7. The public likes UConn. I'm telling you right now, Max, you Syracuse Orange, they better get it together, especially on defense.
You know that we are doing a parlay every week and riding family style, and week 2 already you're trying to destroy that family by making me bet against my alma mater.
That's
BS.
I'm just trying to be right,
That's BS. I wish I could bet against FAU, but unfortunately they're always underdogs in every game. So.
Well, sure, you could do it anyway. We threw 6 interceptions last week. Might throw 6 more this week.
Well, I can't do it for an upset pick because they're never going to be favored in any game.
Oh, wow. See that? See the cruelty.
I'm lashing out. I am lashing out now.
Max is mad right now.
Well, I have to bet against Syracuse against UConn. That's complete BS.
I've got an even better Syracuse stat later in this show that you're going to hate me even more.
I don't want to hear it.
I have one more Syracuse stat just because I found it one day and I absolutely loved it.
I just don't want to hear it.
You'll get it later in the. Oh, you're going to hear it. Okay. Anyway, what do you have for me? This is going to be fun.
I've got one that I think you'll like too. UNLV plus 124 over UCLA. I thought UCLA, they got dominated by Utah in that game, which is not that surprising to us in week 1. I thought UNLV bounced back pretty well last week against Sam Houston after what was a close game in week 1 against an FCS opponent. But I think UNLV now all of a sudden looks like a top contender to win the Mountain West and maybe make the playoff this year too. And UCLA, It looks like it could be a rough year for that program all around. I think Nico Iamaleava might be the only bright spot in that program. So UNLV as one of the top group of 5 playoff contenders going against UCLA. I like plus 124 for the Rebels to win.
Tell you what, I think that's a really good call. Dan Mullen, Anthony Calandria in this offense, they're getting it rolling. They've scored 38 points in each of the first 2 games. And the one thing I'll tell you, if you think UCLA is coming out of Utah, the run defense got shredded, you think they're getting some sort of reprieve, not the case. Jaden Thomas and this UNLV rushing offense could make a big difference. I like that one a lot as well. UNLV, they got to figure things out a little bit more defensively. They got to keep tweaking and figure it out defensively. But Dan Mullen's got this offense rolling. He picked the right quarterback in Anthony Calandria, and they can really run the football. UNLV's a good team. I'm in on that one also.
Donnie saying Western Kentucky plus 188 over Toledo. That's a fun one.
I don't hate that. If McIver,
that's a really good group
if their quarterback Maverick McIver can get in a rhythm there, and I know it's a really good Toledo defense, if they can make that a high-scoring game, that's another one. I think that's a good call.
And then Beckett, one of our coworkers actually, who is saying a game that we're going to be previewing in just a little bit, Kansas over Missouri plus 190. We'll get to that game later because that's going to be a fun one.
That's a fun one. We're picking outside of these games, but you never know. That we've already been picking up at least one upset over here already. So, I mean, two. It was because Baylor was the underdog too.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Producer Eli has the parlay odds for us, which now unfortunately includes betting against Syracuse. But Eli, what is the parlay odds for us this week?
Parlay this week, not as enticing as last week, but it's plus 1,574. That means if you bet $10, you will win 167.
I'll take that.
The PFF College Football Show sponsored parlay. 0 for 3.
Sure.
0 for 3 last week.
0 for 3 last week was tough. But hopefully we get it right this week. Obviously, all lines and odds are subject to change. The rivalries are real. The bands are loud. And the upsets, they're already shaking up the rankings. College football is rolling. And there's still time to turn your picks into big payouts with DraftKings Sportsbook. Think you know the game? Prove it every Saturday. From live betting during the game to rivalry week odds boosts and so much more, DraftKings Sportsbook has everything that you need to stay in the action from kickoff to the final whistle. Whether you're betting on your go-to team or making moves mid-game as the momentum shifts, Saturdays are yours to win with DraftKings Sportsbook. Here's something special for first-timers. New customers, bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PFF. That is code PFF for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY, HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY 567-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Fees may apply in Illinois, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/audio. All right, that wraps up our upset picks of the week. Sucks I'm picking against Syracuse. But Drake Collidic taking Eastern Washington over Boise State, too. He is selling the Boise State Broncos.
Selling on the Broncos.
He is selling the Boise State Broncos.
How about that? The red field versus the blue field.
He also says, your mind is cold and analytical, reptilian even. That's what makes Dalton a great analyst, nonetheless.
I'm reptilian. Okay.
You're the reptile.
I'm the reptile. Oh, boy. That's
actually a cool nickname, the reptile.
The number of nicknames I could pick up on this show. Oh, boy. But I appreciate that. I try to be like, I try to take the emotions out of it, like unlike some people
I
here.
love that.
You know? There's just one of us is very emotional, the other's reptilian. That's what we're going with.
By the way, Donnie, 24-21 Iowa was his final score. Like, that's fair.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. Little high scoring for my taste in that game, but that's fair. One or the other of those teams is going to win by like a field goal. That sounds about right.
All right, Reptile. Let's get to the next one. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Ole Miss at Kentucky. Ole Miss looking for revenge in this game because last year they entered the season as the number 6 team in the country, its highest preseason ranking since 1970. However, Even after entering the year number 6, Ole Miss missed the 12-team playoff last year after finishing with a 9-3 record. The first and most shocking of those 3 losses came at home against Kentucky, a school that only won 3 other games in the 2024 season. Ole Miss entered that game as 15.5-point favorites in that ball game. So Lane Kiffin and the Rebels now on the road at Kentucky looking for revenge this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was really, it's not where things went off the rails for Ole Miss, but it felt inexplicable. And it felt like Kentucky had the formula. Look, just prevent them from hitting home runs down the field, right? And then keep yourself in the game and win an ugly defensive game. It's exactly what they got to do against Ole Miss. And even then, later in the year, there was a couple of games for the Rebels that it burned them. If you could prevent the deep ball like Kentucky did, they gave you the blueprint, then that's how you beat them for the most part, right? So I think there's a big revenge factor here. If Ole Miss wants to get their SEC slate off to a good start, they really need to win this game. And Kentucky, look, solid win. I know it's a one-score win over Toledo last week, but Toledo's a really good team. Kentucky gets out starting 1-0, so this is really interesting. But I think for Ole Miss especially, they got to not get flashbacks, or this game could get dangerous. They know from last year.
So tell me more about the new quarterback for Kentucky, Zach Calzada, against an Ole Miss defense that was one of the best in the nation last year, but also lost a lot of talent from that defense.
They lost a lot of talent, and I think Kentucky, look, I think the facts are they're going to want to make this game the same as they did last year, right? It was 17-13, I believe it was. It was ugly. It was defensive. They were running for 4 yards at a time. They got the one big play at the end to Barryon Brown that set up the winning touchdown. I just think for Kentucky, it's all about controlling the pace of the game. Run the football. Run the football. Look, last week they ran for 220 yards. Their 2 running backs combined for 207 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Dante Dowdell, Seth McGowan. These are the guys that you have to ride behind with Josh Braun and that offensive line, those guys up front. So I think the story is going to be the same. The difference is, and maybe it's not that different because it was Brock Vandegrift last year and he struggled most. He played pretty well in this game, but Zach Calzada last week, it was a struggle. He only threw for 85 yards, 43 passing grade. And Max, the thing that concerns me with Calzada, and this is what I saw with him at Incarnate Word and just the style that he played with, is it's just an absolute gunslinger. I mean, just going for home runs. Last week against Toledo, a very good secondary, average depth of target of almost 15 yards. You just can't do that in the SEC. You have to dial it back and work the chains, right? You're not going to get those home runs all the time against SEC defenses, and this is the first one you're playing. Couldn't do it against Toledo last week. They didn't have more than, I think it was 2 explosive pass plays last week, and they didn't go for big home runs like that. So I think what you're looking at, as always with Kentucky, be physical, ride your offensive line, run the football, and keep Calzada out of 3rd and longs. And if you're Calzada, I think you need to dial it back. You have to move the chains in this game. You have to play it more conservative. If he has a 15-yard average depth of target in this game, it's going to be a problem because you just can't try. Kentucky's not built for that. They're not built to do that. They're not built to sling the ball downfield like that, which is the part that makes it his style a little bit of an odd fit for their offense. If you can get it going naturally with play action and with the run game, I have no issue with it. But just dropping back and slinging the ball downfield like that, like he did at the FCS level with Incarnate Word, it's not going to work. So Kentucky just really needs to get down, run the football directly at Ole Miss, milk the clock, control the game.
And I think Kentucky improved that offensive line a lot because last year was a really bad offensive line, and they added a lot of transfers this year too. Joshua Braun, the guard they have, is a really good player, I thought, from Arkansas. So they did improve the offensive line. So, yeah, they got to get physical. And also, Ole Miss on the other side of the ball, that offensive line is going to play better too because Ole Miss, my matchup to watch is, can they limit the pressure on Austin Simmons? So, listen, Ole Miss's passing attack has a lot going for it right now. Obviously, Lane Kiffin, the head coach, one of the brightest offensive minds that we have in college football. The receiving core, I had as a top 5 receiving core in the country entering the year. Now, of course, Luke Haas battling that injury is tough, but they have plenty of depth at tight end, too, with Daquan Wright, who might be a top 15 tight end in the country. Caleb Odom was a former highly rated recruit coming out of high school, too, at tight end. So they're just fine at tight end, even with Luke Haas, another Arkansas transfer, ironically, battling injury. And the quarterback, Austin Simmons, has plenty of talent, too, as a former 4-star, and he looked good last year as a backup. The one issue with Ole Miss's passing game in recent years has been its offensive line. The Rebels were 90th in pass blocking grade last year, and they only had a 64.6 pass blocking grade in week 1 against Georgia State. The interior offensive line for Ole Miss was a big problem in that game. Only a 45.4 pass blocking grade from the interior offensive line against Georgia State. They allowed a sack and 3 quarterback hits from that interior. And Simmons struggled with pressure in his face too, with only a 29.7 passing grade under pressure in that ball game. That could be a problem, considering Kentucky's star defensive player is Washington State transfer defensive tackle David Gusta. He was 6th among all D tackles in the country last year with an 84.8 pass rush grade. The Wildcats also had a 91.7 pass rush grade against Toledo in week 1, the highest of any team in college football. If Austin Simmons is consistently under pressure, the Ole Miss offense could struggle to score just like last year against Kentucky.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at what Kentucky did against Toledo last week, and I know obviously this is a step up offensively. 23 pressures from 14 different players, right? So maybe it's not like it used to be where Deion Walker was the big guy and you were working around it. It's a whole crew. Khalil Saunders, Cam Old, Steven Souls, Gusto you mentioned, Tavion Gatson. I mean, you're talking about just a ton of guys and a big rotation of guys on that defensive line that could cause problems. This is the one part for a young quarterback in Austin Simmons making his first SEC start. Can you handle the pressure in front of you? Because, I mean, if it's me and Kentucky's rolling like that on the D-line, I'm not blitzing a whole lot. Let's sit back.
Yeah.
Let's not give up the home runs like last year. They didn't give up many deep balls last year, right? Keep it in front of him. And Simmons threw the ball well last week. I really think he did, but that was against Georgia State. This is a whole different thing. So Mark Stoops, I think the emphasis, as always, we've mentioned on both sides already, win in the trenches, be the more physical team, and that's how you're going to keep yourself in it, is get Simmons under pressure. And you mentioned it, that offensive line for Ole Miss. It was kind of a problem last year. And this year, not great again so far. So this is a unit that could be the one, this defensive line for Kentucky, that gives Ole Miss the problems.
So will Kentucky pull off another massive upset, the second one in a row over Ole Miss, or will Lane Kiffin get revenge on the Wildcats?
I'm going to take Ole Miss. I think last year, I don't want to say it's an aberration, but it was just every single thing for them went wrong in this game, right? And I just think you have a moment here where as long as Austin Simmons keeps his composure in his first SEC start, I think they're going to be okay. I've got Ole Miss 30 and Kentucky 17. I think they have so many options. You mentioned the tight ends, Dejon Stribling, Caden Lee. Harrison Wallace had a big first game last week. I'm sure you love hearing that, of the Penn State transfer. There's just so many options, and they kept the playbook pretty vanilla last week. I think they were hiding a lot of things. They didn't run a single screen, which is usually a big part of it. Daquan Wright, I really like in the play action and RPO game. He can do a lot of things after the catch. So I think Ole Miss, they have enough weapons to get this done, and I really think it comes down to me also. Just I wasn't a huge fan of what I saw from Calzado last week. He's got to be better than that. He's got to dial it back. And this is a game where you have to understand the assignment. I've talked about this before. Mark Stoops is going to go to him and say, "Listen, we're trying to have a slugfest here, man. I can't have you just chucking it downfield and stopping the momentum or turning the ball over or anything like that. Let's dial it back in. Let's try to win this game in a conservative manner." But I think I'm threading the needle there. If Kentucky's going to win again, I'll take Ole Miss 30-17.
I've got Ole Miss, but I don't have Ole Miss covering. I have 27-20 I have in this ball game. I think Ole Miss's offensive line could struggle once again against Kentucky, which could make it a lot closer than most people expect it to be. But even so, even if the Ole Miss offensive line struggles, I do not see Zach Calzada and that Kentucky offense putting up enough points to win this ball game. So I have it 27-20. I have Ole Miss getting revenge on Kentucky after losing to them last year. All right, next up, another 3:30 game. Kansas at Missouri, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2. The border war rivalry is back. So back when Missouri was a member of the Big 12 Conference, it had a fierce rivalry with Kansas known as the Border War. But these two programs have not met since Missouri joined the SEC in 2012. This rivalry was revived this year as a part of both of their non-conference slates, and it's the first border war in 14 years. So it's really awesome to see these two programs that really do not like each other and haven't played in 14 years are finally playing each other once again.
Yeah, it's always good to just have one of these rivalries back. And I know it's out of conference, but still it's going to feel like you're going to feel that intensity, especially being so long between these two fan bases. And look, two pretty good football teams. Kansas is off to a really good 2-0 start. I know it's two opponents they should beat, but they've looked really good, especially offensively. And then Missouri last week looked solid in Bo Pribula's first start. And I think him taking over this quarterback role, this is really his first big test. I think that's the biggest story of this game.
Absolutely. So you have the Missouri offense with Bo Prabula, who looked pretty good in his debut as Missouri's starting quarterback. What should we know when the Tigers have the ball?
Yeah, I think that's just the theme here. I really do, is that it's Bo Prabula's first real, and I know we saw him play the second half of the Wisconsin game last year for Penn State. He played a lot of the Wildcat role. He got in spot duty, right, for Andy Koldenicki at Penn State, but now it's his team. This is his team. I like the first start. Look, 91.5 passing grade last week against an FCS opponent, 283 and 2 touchdowns, a big-time throw. We know he can run the football, 70 rushing yards, and I think at least for one game against an easier opponent, we saw what we used to see out of Kirby Moore, I would say more so in 2023, with the play calling when Brady Cook was fully healthy and things were rolling with Luther Burden and all those guys, Cody Schrader when they had that offense going. I think Prabula as the dual threat really adds that dimension back in where you have the play action, the option threats. You can still get, traditional in your run game with their outside zone schemes and Ahmad Hardy. I just think in general, and I love the way that also, I don't know where he was last year. I would have used him more last year. I really like that Marquise Johnson now seems like the primary deep threat because I think it opens he's got track level speed. Love that. You've got Kevin Coleman underneath. I mean, you've got
player, yeah.
You've got guys that really I think mesh well together, but it's around Prabula. And something I'm looking at to me when I've watched him in the small sample that we have at Penn State and now at Missouri, intermediate throws, I think down the seams, 15 to 18-yard crossers, especially off play action when that space is opened up with those linebackers stepping up. I think those are a lot of his best throws, and I think that's really where Kansas struggles. Kansas last year, Max, against intermediate throws, 10 to 19 yards, 29.2 coverage grade, 10th worst in the country. Last year, they had Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson on the outside, but Kansas really struggled to cover in the middle of the field, their linebackers and the safeties. Now the corners are gone, so you've got to dedicate those resources to Johnson and Coleman on the outside, but you look at what they could do with Coleman over the middle of the field on those deep crossers. Brett Norfleet is a tight end that can do some things, especially underneath and at that second level. I think there's a lot of Bo Prabula's tendencies that play well for him in this game as long as he can adjust to the caliber of opponent and not crack under the pressure of, okay, now we're playing big games as a starter in the SEC against teams like Kansas, a Big 12 team like Kansas, right? 4 quarters of consistent football. Want to see that out of him, but I think there's some of his best throws that he makes, I think are kind of tailor-made to beat Kansas's defense here.
So you're watching the quarterback on Missouri. I'm watching the quarterback on Kansas because my matchup to watch is, can Jalen Daniels continue his scorching hot streak to the season right now? Jalen Daniels, let's face it, last year was a roller coaster. He had the second best big-time throw rate in the Power 4, only trailing DJ Lagway. He's actually tied with Jackson Dart in that metric. But his 4.3% turnover-worthy play rate was the 9th highest in the Power 4. Look at those numbers right there through 2 weeks so far. He has been playing like one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Now, yes, it was against Fresno State and Wagner, but 90.5 PFF grade, top 10 in the country. Top 10 in the country in adjusted completion rate. Top 5 in the country in passing yards. Top 2 in the country in passing touchdowns, too. So he's played really well so far through 2 games for Kansas, which is good to see considering last year he was a complete roller coaster. Usually you would see some great games from him and then some really bad games from Jalen Daniels. So far through 2 games, he has been nothing but outstanding for the Jayhawks. Missouri's pass defense was very good in a 61-6 win over Central Arkansas. They had a 90.2 coverage grade in the victory, which is currently 3rd in America right now. It's also the 2nd highest single game coverage grade Missouri's ever had since PFF began grading college football in 2014. But again, Central Arkansas, whole different animal with Jalen Daniels this week. I'm really curious to see, one, can Jalen Daniels just really keep up this scorching hot streak he's on right now against the Tigers?
I'll tell you how he can. One, I like that Kansas in these first 2 games. Look, Jalen Daniels, obviously a home run hitter, an athletic guy. He can do a lot of things. And look, when he is hot, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He just runs hot and cold. 2 things I like. One, Kansas still this year through 2 games, they're running 58% of the time. Don't feel like he has to take the game over until he really has to. There's going to come moments where it's, Jalen's got to take the game over, but you don't have to do that from front to back. And I think last year there were too many moments, especially in these out-of-conference games. Remember when they played Illinois last year? And it just felt like, why are they asking Jalen Daniels to do everything, right? The other thing I like that wasn't in that graph, one more Daniels number specifically. Last year, average depth of target, 12.4 yards. Way too high, taking too many shots. Through 2 games this year, only 8.8. We know he's got the arm talent. We know he can hit the deep ball. We know he can make that happen. But wait your turn, essentially. Stay patient. Let the defense set it up. Take your shots when you – because he's got the arm to make any throw. We know it. His back looks healthy. He's got the arm to make any deep throw out there. We know Kansas knows how to design those deep shots. But don't feel like you have to force it. I love the way that he's playing to set the offense up first and then hit those home runs.
So, in the first border war in 14 years, who will win between Kansas and Missouri?
Man, I had a hard time with this game. The one thing I do feel like is that this is going to be a high-scoring game. This over-under at 50.5, I'm feeling points in this game. I'm going to be honest, because I think Bo Pribula and his skill set works against the Kansas defense. I think Jalen Daniels, how hot he's running right now, if he's going to keep playing the way he's playing. And don't forget this Kansas running game, too, right? You've got Daniel Highshaw. You've got LaShawn Williams. Jalen Daniels himself can run the football very well. He's really athletic. I'm actually going to go with the more experienced quarterback here in a shootout. I'm going to take the Jayhawks on the road 35-31 because when Jalen Daniels is playing like this and he's not forcing it, this Kansas team is dangerous. And we said this last year with Kansas. They finished 5-7, but the phrase I used for them the last few weeks of last year when they got hot down the stretch, that was a good team with a bad record. They lost a lot of close games. They're better than a 5-7 team, especially if Daniels is playing like this. I'm going to take Daniels and the Jayhawks to pull the upset on the road.
Our first disagreement today, I have Missouri winning 27-24. I think Missouri's defense will keep Jalen Daniels in check enough to pull off this game, and I think Bo Pribula and that offense will pull off enough plays to win that ball game too. So I have Missouri winning the border war at home, 27-24 over Kansas. The top 25 of the AP poll just dropped on. We actually should go over that after we go through our previews, I think.
Sure, why not?
We'll recap that, review that real quickly, but pretty interesting top 25. We'll say that. Next up at 4:15 is USF at Florida. Florida, who just came into the AP poll, they are coming in as the number 13 team in the country in the new AP poll right now. But this might be a trap game for the Gators. The Gators right now, like I said, number 13 in the country, legitimate college football playoff aspirations. I even have Florida as a top 10 team in the country right now. They took care of business in week 1 against Long Island University, an FCS school, with a 55-0 shutout victory. With all respect to the Sharks, this week 2 matchup presents a much more difficult challenge for the Gators. USF is coming off a 34-7 win over number 25 Boise State in week 1, really destroying any hopes for easily the favorite to repeat as the Group of 5 playoff team. If the Bulls can pull off this upset this week, they become, in my opinion, the absolute clear favorite to take that Group of 5 playoff spot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the USF has an interesting opportunity the next couple weeks. Beating Boise is a big win, but they play Florida this week, and they play Miami next week. If they were to somehow pull off one of these two massive upsets, yeah, they got the inside track, because that's probably the best win, in all likelihood, that a Group of 5 team would have over a Power 4 team this year. We'll see where it goes, but USF also, they've made a habit of these close games against Power 4. The last 2 years against Alabama, 3 years ago, the last time they played the Gators in the Swamp, it came down to, it was 31-28. It came down to a missed field goal from USF to tie the game at the end. That was before Alex Golesh was there. But USF has a habit once a year of turning one of these games into a slugfest you wouldn't expect. Keep in mind last year when this team played Alabama, it was a one-score game with 6 minutes left. The year before, in Alex Golesh's first year, they lost it. The score was 17-3, but Bama threw a touchdown on the board with like no time left just to make it look better. They really only lost to Alabama like 10-3. So USF, you mess around, they just have a way of playing up in these games, and Byron Brown's obviously a very dangerous quarterback.
Absolutely. And you have Byron Brown and the USF offense in this one, which you know when they have the ball.
A healthy Byron Brown is an extremely dangerous dual-threat playmaker. 91.3 PFF grade against a very good Boise State defense last week. And you look at what he does when he's healthy, he can beat you any which way. He's got a really strong arm in this offense that perfectly fits Alex Golesh. When you talk about Golesh, he used to be the OC at Tennessee before he had this job, so he was under Josh Heupel there. It's the same exact offense. Fast tempo. At its best, they want to run the most offensive plays per game in the country. They want to get vertical, and Byron Brown's extremely talented, especially on the ground. even against Power 4, SEC teams, whatever. He is dangerous with his feet. 4 explosive runs last week, and that doesn't even count the one that got negated by a holding penalty where he broke 5 tackles and had, was it a 40 or 50-yard touchdown against Boise State, looking like Cam Newton out there. Byron Brown does this all the time. The rushing, he's 6'3", he's 220, 235, 225, just an absolute menace on the ground. He really is. And then if you complement that with the passing game, and I like USF's offense better. And look, Sean Atkins was a great player for him the last couple of years, but he was more of a crafty slot, move the chains threat. I really think they have something on the outside with Chaz Nimrod as more of a vertical threat. They didn't have that the last couple of years at USF to match with Byron Brown in the strong arm and to really take the top off of a defense, right? So it's funny because these two teams, the last time they played each other, they didn't Alex Golesh wasn't the head coach. So what did I do instead? I wanted to see how Florida handles this defense or this offense. I went, okay, then I'll watch the Florida-Tennessee game from last year. It's the same exact thing. And what Florida's going to do, they're going to sit back. They're going to sit back in quarters. They're not going to let you hit those home runs. And what they're going to hope to do is that defensive line dominates, because that's the biggest question I have for USF in this game. They've got some injuries on the offensive line. They played well enough last week to beat Boise State, but they've got to be able to hold up against Tyreek Sapp and those guys up front. That's going to be the big challenge for USF. But if they're able to do that, and they can play just well enough up front, Byron Brown can absolutely hurt you, and even big opponents like this. He has proven he is one of the best athletes on the field no matter what field he steps on.
I would argue he's right now the best Group of 5 quarterback we have.
Yeah, it's an argument. Calandria's been great for UNLV. Obviously, Retzloff's getting it together at Tulane. There's a really good group of G5 quarterback. Parker Navarro's another one.
Yeah.
But Byron Brown, when you talk about just the scary level of dual threat talent, and especially the way his legs can take games over, it's a real problem, and Florida cannot be on their heels with him.
Definitely. So on the other side, it's also about the quarterback. Can USF secondary limit the deep shots from DJ Lagway? DJ Lagway is one of the most talented arms in college football right now, and he sure does love to show it off, too. He led the Power 4 as a true freshman with an 8.8% big-time throw rate. His average depth of target was 11.8 yards. That was third in the Power 4 last year. This past week, he had a very good 84.2 PFF grade against Long Island University. Didn't throw as many deep shots, kept it pretty conservative in this one, but you still know that he has that kind of arm talent. Is maybe one of the most talented arms in the country, probably one of the 5 most, I would say, in the country right now. He's going to want to show it off. USF has had a very difficult time limiting explosive passing plays under head coach Alex Golesh since he was hired in 2023. The Bulls have given up an explosive pass on 17.6% of passing plays. That's the 4th worst rate in the entire country. Even against a conservative quarterback last week in Maddox Matson, who really doesn't want to push the ball downfield at all, USF still gave up 7 explosive passing plays in that game. So you go from Maddox Matson to DJ Lagway. That's a completely different ball game this week. I'm worried for that USF secondary against DJ Lagway and a loaded group of receivers that Florida's got this year.
No, absolutely. Look, it's a veteran USF defense, and I think they did look more fundamentally sound last week against Boise State, and I thought they stayed on assignment better than almost any game I've watched them the last 2 years. I think that's been an issue, is blown coverages, miscommunications. Todd Orlando had them more in sync last week, but you mentioned it, Boise State, they also didn't have the most explosive weapons in the world either, and Florida, we know, has got them on the outside. Trey Wilson, J. Michael Sturdivant, Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown. I mean, they got monsters on the outside. USF's issues in some of these big games when it gets away from them is, can they prevent those shots? Can they prevent themselves from having blown coverages and miscommunications? If they can do that and keep themselves in the game, their front 7 in these kinds of games plays well a lot. I especially like their linebackers who both played well. Mac Harris and Jalen Schuler last week had great games against Boise State. Up front, I do think their defensive front, USF can keep up in this. And I know Florida's offensive line's a monster too, Jake Slaughter and those guys, but it really is the secondary in this game that has to keep them in it. If you can make Lagway work underneath, then maybe you have a shot on defense to stay in it.
Absolutely. So, ultimately, will USF pull off another big upset against another potential playoff team in Florida, or Will Florida avoid the trap game?
I think when you mentioned the contrast between Florida and Boise State, and there could not be more of a contrast between two offenses right now, that's a big key here, right? Because you're talking about an offense that can throw vertically. And I think one theme from USF's game last week against Boise, they had a major speed advantage on defense. They were just so much faster than Boise State. That's not going to be the case here with Florida, right? And you've got DJ Lagway, who was looking to sling it deep, as he always is, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Florida. The spread is 17.5. Just for my brother, I'm going to take USF to cover. 34-20 Gators.
So you're going to be on the good side of your brother and Trevor Sikkema, who's a noted diehard Florida fans and alum of that
I'm
program.
threading the needle, unless Trevor's mad that I'm not having him cover.
He might be.
He could be mad. He's like, what? Maybe Trevor might feel disrespected, but I'm riding with. I'm gonna have USF on the cover for my brother and an over. I think USF, honestly, I think offensively they can absolutely have some success in this. A healthy 100% Byron Brown, especially one that plays like he did last week. That's a problem. Doesn't matter G5, P4, whatever. He's a problem against anybody.
Shout out to your brother. I'm also taking Florida in this one and just barely missing out on the cover. I have it 37-21. I just think DJ Lagway and these weapons, I mean, you saw the catch from Vernell Brown, the 5-star true freshman. My God, they have talent in that receiver room. And with USF secondary in the past few years really struggling against deep passing plays, and you have maybe the best deep passer in all of college football in DJ Lagway with those weapons, it's a bad matchup. It's a really bad matchup for USF secondary, unfortunately. So USF still absolutely alive in the Group of 5 playoff race, but I don't think they'll do enough to beat a team like Florida in week 2. So I have Florida winning 37-21. We have a few massive night games to get to, and the biggest game of the week is next in 2 top 20 teams in Michigan and Oklahoma. But got to talk about the sponsor of the show. That is ZipRecruiter. Finding great candidates to hire can be like trying to find a parking spot on the weekend. You get so many resumes and not enough candidates with the right skills or the right experience, but not with ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter finds amazing candidates for you fast. And right now, you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter's smart technology identifies top talent for all of your roles quickly. Immediately after you post your job, ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology starts showing you all of the qualified people for that job. They let you talk to top candidates ASAP. You can use ZipRecruiter's pre-written invite to apply message to personally reach out to your favorite candidates and encourage them to apply sooner. Ditch the other hiring sites and let ZipRecruiter find what you're looking for, the needle in the haystack. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate within the first day of posting that job. Try it for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Again, ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. All right, the big one. Where game is going in week 2. The only ranked matchup in week 2. Number 15, Michigan, at number 18, Oklahoma. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Dalton, these are 2 programs that are remarkably similar, because last year, both Michigan and Oklahoma had disappointing years in 2024. Michigan won the national title in 2023, only won 8-5 last year. They had 5 losses last year, more than the previous 3 years combined for Michigan. The Sooners had their second losing season in 3 years under Brent Venables. They did not have a losing season in the entire 21st century before Brent Venables was hired. And both programs, they can't blame the defenses for their letdowns last year. Michigan last year, 6th in the country in defensive grade. Oklahoma was 6th in the country in EPA per play on defense. The passing games for both programs were a disaster last year. The Wolverines, the Power 4's 4th worst team in EPA per pass. The Sooners had the worst passing grade in the Power 4 last year, actually worst grade offensively on passing plays at 55.5. However, both programs also have really hope for improvement this year, because Michigan brought in Bryce Underwood, the number 1 overall recruit in the country, one of the highest rated quarterbacks of all time coming out of high school, and Oklahoma brought in John Mateer from Washington State, who's one of the Heisman favorites right now, and he had an 83.3 PFF grade in 2024. So just 2 programs who, yes, are both in the top 20, and just so similar in the fact that they had disappointing years last year, have great defenses, but had a lot of concerns with their passing games last year, but also improved those passing games this year, it seems like.
Yeah, I think that was the theme for both teams, is defenses that kept them in games, even against big opponents, and then offensive dysfunction, and not just the quarterbacks, all the way around. Yep. You saw offensive line, receiver, the running backs. None of it was great, other than obviously for Michigan, Colston Loveland, and there's only so much he could have done. So I think you have two teams in very similar position, and you know what? Two teams that, if they win this game, I think especially Michigan, you win this game and you prove you have the level of potential to go on the road and win a game like this with a true freshman quarterback, one as good as Underwood, you maybe start talking about playoff a little bit. And I know neither one of us had them in the playoff because we were skeptical about this offense as an entirety, not so much Underwood. And I'll tell you what, Underwood looked good last week. He looked really good against New Mexico last week. But the stakes in this game are very high, both for this season and I think for these two programs as a whole.
Donnie makes a great point in the chat, too. Both Michigan and Oklahoma pulled off colossal upsets over Alabama as well last year.
But they did. They did in similar fashion. Be the more physical team, play great defense.
Bama was at least 2 touchdown favorites in both of those games, and they both pulled out the upset.
The Oklahoma game cost Bama a playoff spot, and the Michigan game and the bowl game with Michigan really not playing any of their prime time. Mason Graham and those guys didn't play. You're talking about two teams that know how to grind out ball games, but you do need the offensive pieces to complement that.
So talk about the Oklahoma offense with John Mateer now, the new quarterback at Oklahoma. What should we know with Michigan trying to defend him?
So I think there's a couple of things here. One, I'd be curious to see if Oklahoma can run the football a little bit better than they did last week, because even against an FCS opponent, I believe they only had 105 rushing yards. It just didn't look all the way there, and I expected the run game to look like it was going to be a little bit better so far early. And Jaden Ott only got, 1 or 2? Do we know what the deal is with Jaden Ott? Is he hurt?
I don't know.
Is he just not starting? Does he not know the playbook because he hasn't been there what is – I don't know what the deal is there.
He's a top 15 running back in the country, in my opinion.
But the backfield, to me, the backfield didn't look great last week. So, whether that's the case or not, if Michigan can stop the run, then it comes down to John Mateer versus Wink Martindale, right? Michigan's defensive coordinator, Don Wink Martindale. And I think for Martindale, it's a pick-your-poison type thing because he's a heavy pressure. Even when he was an NFL defensive coordinator, he's a heavy pressure play caller, right? Last year, blitzed on 43% of pass plays he faced. That's once you're getting up over 40, it's getting high. He was at 43. John Mateer, one of two things is going to happen. Either Martindale's going to sit back and wait in coverage, and Mateer is going to try to beat him with his arm because that's generally how that works. Or he's going to send pressure, 43%, 50%, 60%, however much. If Martindale wants to pressure a guy who's playing his first big game on a Power 4 team, then you're talking about, okay, what's he going to beat me with? Then that's when John Mateer tries to use his legs to beat you against the blitz. So when teams blitzed him last year, John Mateer had a 60.5 passing grade. That was 114th in the country. 7 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays. Response to pressure for him is a big thing. He likes to play a lot of playground football, but you can't turn the ball over in what's supposed to be probably a tight defensive game here. But when he was blitzed also among qualified quarterbacks, 82.6 rushing grade, 3rd best in the country. So what do you do with Mateer? Do you sit back and you trust your coverage and your 4-man rush? And is he going to keep him in? You're going to keep him in the pocket and let him and have him try to beat you with his arm. I'm not saying he'll do it, but maybe not. We'll see. We don't know what this Oklahoma offense looks like yet because, again, there's another one. They played an FCS team last week. Okay, let's see it against a really good defense. Or do you send pressure, force him to make quicker decisions, and take your chances that you can catch him because John Mateer's a really good athlete, and when he breaks the pocket, who knows what's going to happen. It really is kind of that almost Johnny Manziel playground type of football back there. I think it's a pick-your-poison bit for Wink Martindale. What does he feel most comfortable doing, and does he have a pressure plan to where he can apply it to Mateer and also not let him kill him with his legs? Because that could be an issue if you bring too much pressure and he breaks contain.
Definitely. So I'm looking at the other quarterback too, obviously. Bryce Underwood. Can he be as decisive as he was in his debut? So again, he entered Ann Arbor as the #1 recruit in the 2025 class. And one of the highest rated quarterbacks ever. And Dalton, he looked the part. Remember pre-show, you even came up to me like, dude, this guy's a real deal.
There is a level. It's not just the arm and the arm talent. That's obvious. A lot of guys have arm talent. There is a level of anticipation and timing and even a feel for the pocket that he already has that you don't see guys have. I know it's New Mexico. It is what it is. It's his first career college start. There's an anticipation and timing to his game that you don't usually see till you see it from the veterans.
He had a 79.9 PFF grade in that win over New Mexico in week 1. 83.3% adjusted completion rate. Both those stats are very good. The most impressive stat to me, though, his average time to throw was 2.24 seconds. When you always see these young quarterbacks and they're standing back there and they don't know what they're looking at a defense, that average time to throw is like 3 or more seconds, or maybe like 2.7 seconds or more, because they don't know what they're looking at. They're trying to see an open receiver. Bryce Underwood, in his first career game, was getting the ball out not only at a good rate, at an elite rate in college football. He was seeing the field at a really high level in his first career game. That's special stuff right there.
And you could tell that level of anticipation and the ability. The special ones have the ability to see it before it happens. Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, a lot of the great quarterbacks we've watched over the years, right? They have the ability to see it before it happens. And there were even a couple of throws that were excellent throws that you could tell his receivers are not used to that level of timing and anticipation.
Oh, the one over the top to the tight end.
There was that one.
Gorgeous.
There was one that was incomplete on like a wheel or a rail, something like that down the sideline that he threw a perfect. It like hit a guy in the numbers and he wasn't even looking because he didn't see the ball coming. And it's not that Underwood was early or anything. It's just that these receivers, and it's crazy. He's a true freshman making his first start.
He just turned 18. Yeah.
These receivers are trying to catch up to him and his level of time. He's not doing anything wrong here. He's throwing these balls on the spot. And it's just getting there before they expect it to get he sees it, and I'm telling you right now, that's a special ability to see things like that.
You know what I love from him too is that he was so committed to playing within the rhythm of the offense.
Yes.
When you see Caleb Williams and guys like that, they think, oh, well, look, guys out of high school, when you're a superstar, you're the number one quarterback out of high school, number one player in the country. He could just out-athlete every high school player he's playing against. And when you get to college, sometimes you got to learn, hey, I can't do that anymore. Now he's like, no, I know I can't do that. I'm going to run this offense the way it's designed. I'm going to get the ball out quickly on the right time to the right player too. Just unreal stuff. I know it's New Mexico week 1, but unreal stuff for Bryce Underwood as an 18-year-old. However, Brent Venables' defense is a whole different animal than New Mexico. Only 2 quarterbacks had 80-plus grades against Oklahoma last year. Jackson Dart, Lenora Sellers. Superstars we're talking about. We're talking about a first-round pick in Jackson Dart and a potential first-round pick in Lenora Sellers this year too. Since PFF began charting college football in 2014, here are the true freshman quarterbacks that go against Brent Venables. All these happened against Clemson, who was a defensive coordinator, because this actually never happened before at Oklahoma, where a true freshman against him. Kendall Hinton, who's a receiver now, right, in the NFL, 85.1. Everybody else 65 or below. And look at that, Dalton. You got Jalen Hurts. You got Sam Howell on there. Even John Wolford played in the NFL for a little bit too. Jalen Hurts has just won a Super Bowl. And as a true freshman against Brent Venables, I believe the national title game, 65 PFF grade. Right? So you see Brent Venables. He knows what to do to make these young quarterbacks very uncomfortable. A staple of his defense is how often he blitzes quarterbacks. Since he was hired at Oklahoma in 2022, the Sooners have blitzed at 41.4%. That's a top 15 rate in the Power 4. But with that heavy blitz rate, if Bryce Underwood and his average time to throw remains that low and he's able to deliver the ball quickly to his hot routes, that's an avenue for Michigan's offense to find success. But really, it's all about, to me, the biggest stat for Bryce Underwood more than anything else is average time to throw. Because Brent Venables is going to try to make him as uncomfortable as possible. But if he's sending a blitz at Bryce Underwood and he's getting the ball out within 2.2 seconds, it's not going to work for Oklahoma's defense.
No, and they're going to have to pick up a lot of those, right? And the thing about Brent Venables, and he even makes veteran quarterbacks struggle because he gives you so many different looks. He attacks you from so many different angles. It could be a bunch of guys, 6 or 7 guys coming at you. It could be a lot of simulated pressures where you think it's coming one way and it's coming from the other side, and the protection is slid wrong. I think Underwood pre-snap is going to have to really command this offense a lot more than he's used to, right? That's what it takes against a defensive coordinator like this. He mixes up coverages, fronts, blitzes, which way they're coming from, all sorts of twists, everything. And this Oklahoma defense, let's not forget, it's not just Venables. They're really darn talented, too.
Yeah.
And we still have questions. Look, they were good last week against New Mexico, but it's a Michigan team that struggled in pass protection last year. You got guys like R. Mason Thomas and Grayson Halton up front who are really good pass rushers. That's going to be the key. I really think on both sides, it's schematically and even just talent-wise, which one of these quarterbacks under pressure maybe makes the big mistake, maybe makes the big game-changing play, right? Can Underwood see the field in time and know where to go with it? Is he going to turn the ball over under pressure in really his first real game here? And there's not many that are harder to play against earlier in your career than Brent Venables. So I think a fascinating matchup with two quarterbacks obviously stepping well up in competition against two great defenses, and not just great talented defenses, two spectacular defensive play callers. That's really the theme of this game.
So both fan bases very excited about their quarterbacks right now. Which quarterback will lead their team to victory in the only ranked matchup of the week between number 15 Michigan and number 18 Oklahoma?
I'll tell you, the more I watched Underwood last week, the less I would be surprised that if Michigan won this game. I will take Oklahoma 24-21, but this is another one we have. I think this is more of a coin flip than we think, because I don't know what I'm getting out of Underwood. I'm also not entirely sure what I'm getting out of Mateer, and I know people are in the Heisman boat with him and all of that with John Mateer, but this is a really good defense and especially a great defensive coordinator who's coached now college and NFL. He had a great defense last year, even with Michigan's offense struggling, right? So I'm going to take Oklahoma 24-21. I think, look, being at Oklahoma, the home field advantage is going to help. I think Brent Venables against a true freshman making his second start, I think there are going to be moments where that causes trouble, even if Underwood doesn't make the huge mistake, a pick six, something like that, just cause enough confusion, right? Because unless he's truly just a Joe Burrow level savant, and he's got to read on all of it at 18 years old, then we have a whole nother conversation, and the hype in Ann Arbor will be off the rails. I'm going to make what I think is a little bit of a safer bet. Give me the home team by a field goal. I think it could even be lower scoring than that, depending on the performance of the quarterbacks, but two really good defenses going at it. I think just the slimmest of margins goes to Oklahoma here.
I got Oklahoma as well. I have it 21-20.
Yeah.
This is a coin flip. I genuinely had no idea who to pick in this game. I think it will be a defensive slugfest. In that kind of game, though, I do trust John Mateer and his legs and his arm and those weapons. And I think the offensive line is better than what Michigan has, too. Right now, for Michigan, I like Justice Haynes. He had a good game last week. But the supporting cast and the receiving core and the offensive line still have a lot of question marks right now. I love Bryce Underwood, but again, this is his first big-time game, too. I just trust Oklahoma to make a few more plays than Bryce Underwood in this one. And we'll see how Bryce Underwood handles a Brent Venables defense. I've showed that stat right there. Only one quarterback ever who had above a 65 PFF grade, right? So against Brent Venables as a true freshman. So that's what I'm looking at right there. I think Bryce Underwood will be solid in this one. I just don't know if the surrounding cast at Michigan, will be enough to beat Oklahoma in this one. So I have Oklahoma, again, the slimmest of margins. I really like Michigan +6. I'll say that now.
I agree with that. I think it's going to be tight. I think you make a great point, and both sides have been brought up here. Is it Justice Haynes and the Michigan running game that can support their quarterback? Or, because like I said, Oklahoma last week against an FCS opponent, they didn't run the ball very well.
Yeah.
And we really both thought that was going to be the design of this team, is they would be run first and use Mateer's legs to their advantage. Maybe you don't want to show too much against with especially Martindale coming the next week, but Oklahoma's going to need to run the ball. But both teams need to run the ball, because all of a sudden I think against these two DCs, if you're forcing your quarterback to carry you, I think you have a problem in this game.
Definitely. All right, so we both have Oklahoma winning, but it should be an absolute whale of a ball game that could come down to the final minutes, honestly, between those two, and the only ranked matchup of Week 2. Next up, another 7:30 game is Arizona State at Mississippi State. It's on ESPN2. Storyline, at least for me in this one, Arizona State currently ranked number 12 in the country in the new AP poll that just dropped. Is this another trap game for the Sun Devils? So last year, Arizona State, everyone knows, won the Big 12, made the college football playoff quarterfinals, barely lost to Texas in double overtime in that quarterfinal game. Mississippi State, meanwhile, was one of the worst teams in the country. They had a 2-10 record last year in Jeff Lebby's first year as head coach. And yet, when these two met last year, the Sun Devils barely squeaked by at home with a 30-23 victory. Now, this game is in Starkville at Mississippi State. The Bulldogs look to finish the job this year against Arizona State.
So I'm going to throw some context in here for all of that, because I know on the surface everyone's going to go, well, Arizona State beat them by 7. Here's a couple of things that happened with that game. One, that was before Arizona State got raging hot down the stretch. 2, that was before Blake Shapen got hurt, and Blake Shapen will be starting in this game, and that was when Blake Shapen was still healthy. He played a good game. 3, and the hard part for me later with picking this game is Arizona State at one point in this game was up 30-3. and it kind of fell asleep in the fourth quarter a little bit. So there was a bit of, okay, the final score doesn't necessarily tell us that how good Arizona State was for most of this game, but it's still dangerous because there's people expecting Mississippi State to be better. Can Arizona State get over the hangover of being a playoff team last year and the great run that they had and winning the Big 12 and all that? And now it's on the road. Now it's in Starkville, which is notorious, especially at night, for being a tough environment to go to, right? So I think there's a lot of dimensions that, yes, make this game a bit dangerous for the Sun Devils for sure. And then it's a matter, and I'll mention this in a minute, of how we don't know how different it looks yet without Cam Scatterbo. And I like Kyson Brown. I like Kanye Udo, but that was your engine. Now we're going to get to see it against the Power 4 team again. What does that look like?
And a Jeff Lebby program that is desperate for a signature victory after a 2-10 record last year. A solid win, unfortunately. I was wrong on my upset pick. I picked Southern Miss as my upset pick of the week over at Mississippi State. They won that game, Mississippi State did. But if they could beat a top 15 team, a playoff contender in Arizona State, that is a statement saying, hey, we're not going to be a 2-10 team like last year.
Yeah, and I think one thing that would help them, look, Blake Shapen, when he's healthy, he's throwing the ball well in this offense, and that includes last year against Arizona State. The big problem last year for Mississippi State was the rushing difference. They got out-rushed in that game last year, excluding sacks, 350 to 61.
Yeah.
So Mississippi State, you got to find the run game. Now, Devon Booth, Fluff Bothwell, I like the running.
Love Fluff Bothwell.
We love Fluff Bothwell.
That's my guy.
Great player.
Yeah.
But both of those guys, good backs, both had pretty good games last week against Southern Miss. Obviously, step up in competition here. I like Arizona State's defense. They emphasize stopping the run. They're fast. They're aggressive. They got a good set of linebackers, especially, that can really fly to the football. I like this Arizona State defense. Mississippi State, last year, 61 yards on the ground, only 2 missed tackles forced, not a single explosive run. I believe the longest run in that game was 7 yards. And it was the offensive line, too, 55.3 run blocking grade. So, need to have some balance. Don't make Blake Shapen carry you. This Jeff Lebby offense isn't designed for the quarterback to just carry him. It's run heavy, it's play action heavy, it's RPO heavy, and then we take shots when they have space to do it. If they can run for more, if they can make up significantly the rushing difference between 350 and 61, even if they're still at a bit of a disadvantage, but not 6 times what you're getting is what you're giving up. Then you talk about being in a game where you're not down 30-3 early like they were last year, right? And they were turning the ball over, and it was just a mess. And you're not forcing Blake Shapen to carry, because this is not an offense. We used to see this at Oklahoma with Dylan Gabriel. It's not an offense that you want to carry you in the drop back game. You want the play action, you want the RPO, and you want the shots outside the numbers at that point. And there were moments last year where Arizona State had some busts in coverage against this team. They didn't play a great game in coverage against this team last year. So run the ball, though. They got to find a way with Booth and Bothwell. What a good name for a backfield, too. That's great. Booth and Bothwell. Love that. Anyway, just thought of that just now. But either way, 2 good backs, run the football better than you did last year. If they can be a little bit more physical up front, I like where Mississippi State's offense can function in this game.
So I have Arizona State's offense. Mine is, can the Bulldogs force somebody other than Jordan Tyson to beat them in this ball game? Because you look at that game last year, Arizona State relied, and I mean relied, on Cam Scatterbo to win them that ball game. He had an elite 91 PFF grade in that game against Mississippi State. 262 rushing yards, 155 rushing yards after contact. If that wasn't enough, he also led the team with 35 receiving yards in the game. So he was by far the leading rusher and the leading receiver for Arizona State in that win over Mississippi State. But now he's with the New York Giants. So the Sun Devils have another superstar playmaker to rely on in wide receiver Jordan Tyson. He entered this year as my number 3 receiver in the country behind Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams. He had over 1,000 receiving yards last year, only second to Jeremiah Smith among Power 4 players returning to college football. Last week against Northern Arizona, he had 12 catches for 141 yards and 2 touchdowns. He accounted for 55% of Sam Leavitt's passing yards in that win. He accounted for 50% of the total completions for Sam Leavitt in that game, and he accounted for 100% of Sam Leavitt's touchdown passes in that game. It is very clear that he and Sam Leavitt have a very, very good connection. They're both top 3 at their position in the country. I have Sam Leavitt QB2 going into the year, Jordan Tyson a wide receiver 3. I think it is the best quarterback-wide receiver connection that we have in college football right now. Mississippi State, meanwhile, last year had the worst defensive grade in the Power 4 last season, but they added a lot of transfers on the side of the ball. I love Jerron Manning coming in, the safety from Old Dominion. He's a great player. If the Bulldogs can focus on just stopping Jordan Tyson and force Sam Levitt to find somebody else in that passing game or even the run game too to rely on, they can make this game interesting once again. I'm not saying it's going to be as bad as Arizona was last year, where it was Tedder McMillan and that was it for the entire offense. I don't know if it would be that bad, but I do think Jordan Tyson is by far the guy that Arizona State wants to rely on in this offense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you still talk about a team that's going to want to run the football, right, with Sam Levitt himself as a dangerous runner, Kyson Brown, Kanye Udo. I think you're looking at a scenario here. That is the scenario you're afraid of, is the Arizona situation, where it's like we have the quarterback, we have the receiver, we have nothing else. Last week, Arizona State's other wide receivers, 7 targets, 2 catches, 5 yards.
Yeah.
Something else and Kyson Brown was their second leading receiver by far. This is the part you worry about, where my level, I have actually when I looked at Arizona State's offense last week, and I thought to Mississippi State's defense, I know they're playing Southern Miss, and we think Southern Miss is a pretty good team, and actually Southern Miss played a good 2.5 quarters in that game. Their defense looks faster. The Bulldogs' defense looks faster. It looks more sound. It just doesn't look as much. Last year was just a mess. Their defense was a train wreck last year. We can admit that. They look faster. They look more sound. If they can, like you mentioned, you focus on that one target and just make anybody else beat you. You want to bracket. You want to tilt all the zones. You want to do whatever you want. Fine. Arizona State, I have like a medium level of concern for them in this game offensively, because I don't think they put in their best effort last week offensively. I don't think their offensive line played that well. And even Kenny Dillingham in the last couple weeks has made some comments about the way they've practiced that have not been great. I think their defense was still very high energy. I think they're always going to be high energy on defense. But that offense, even last week against an FCS team, there were moments where it was just like, Sam, just save us. You got it. Don't love that. Didn't look as schematically sound as it did last year. So I'm curious to see, maybe in a game of higher intensity, obviously on the road, they're going to have to execute at a high level. But this is one I'm keeping my eye on here. I love Sam Levitt. I love Jordan Tyson. But the entire picture here, maybe we're just having Arizona flashbacks with our picks that we made for the Big 12 last year. But I got to see this in this game. I think I came out of this thinking this game is going to be tougher than people think.
And what's pretty much a cross-country trip for Arizona State, too, in this one. Will Mississippi State pull off the massive upset over a top 15 team, or will the Sun Devils win once again?
I have a higher level of worry about this game than I did going into the film study. I'm still going to take the Sun Devils. I have them 28-24. And the big reason I can sit here and say is Sam Levitt's the best football player on the field, I think. I think overall his legs, what he's opened up now with his legs from the second half of last year, we saw it in the Texas game, and then last week, the long touchdown run, I think he had 94 rushing yards last week. He's going to get out there and he's going to do everything he can to win this football game, and it may take everything he has to win this game, because Jeff Lebby's offense, I think, should be more balanced this year. I think the defense looks faster. If they do have a plan for Jordan Tyson, a competent one, this gets really dangerous, because last week I struggled to see what the other answers were in Arizona State's offense. Are they not deep enough? Now, again, I'm going to ride Levitt. I think he's the best player on the field in this game. They get out a close road win, but I'm going 28-24. I do see the danger here. I'm a little worried about Arizona State's offense and their offensive line specifically.
Drake Hodde making a great point in the chat that Jalen Moss got hurt, one of their other top receivers in last week's game.
Not good. They need a number 2 target somewhere on the outside. And if it was going to be Jalen Moss, do we know if he's going to play this week?
We don't know. I haven't got an update yet. But, this is a guy last year at Fresno State. He had over 500 yards. He had over 700 yards the year before at Fresno State, too. Like, he is a good player. He probably would be the number 2 receiver for this team. So if he's not playing at Mississippi State, that's a big problem.
That's a big problem. I think if that's when you worry about, is this offense all of a sudden too thin, right? Like we saw at Arizona last year. I hate to bring up the rival, but that's exactly what happened at Arizona, especially after Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was declared ineligible. All of a sudden, they had no other answers. So I think it's a dangerous game. I do. I think it's dangerous.
I'm going with Arizona State. I have them covering, but I have it 35-24. So still relatively close. But I think Levitt and Jordan Tyson, they're the 2 best players by far in this game. It's not even close. You're talking about 2 guys who are top 20, top 25 players overall in the country, maybe even top 20, top 25 players overall in the NFL draft this year too. So whenever you have a first-round quarterback and a first-round receiver against Mississippi State, who had the worst defense in the Power 4 last year, I know they did add a lot in the portal too, but I think Arizona State will still have success against them. And I think Arizona State's defense will do enough against Mississippi State and Blake Shapen and those guys too. So I think it'll still be a close game in the beginning, and I think Arizona State will pull away at the very end, but I still think Arizona State will win 35-24. All right, last up in our Week 2 preview, another night game, another 7:30 game. We've got Vanderbilt at Virginia Tech, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ACC Network. Really, can Virginia Tech exact revenge on Vanderbilt? Because last year's season opener was the first time since 1989 that Virginia Tech and Vanderbilt played each other in football. Even though Virginia Tech entered that game as 13.5-point favorites, Vanderbilt announced itself to the college football world with a 34-27 victory. That game, Week 1 of last year, ultimately set the tone for how the 2024 season would go for both programs. Vanderbilt had their first winning season in 11 years. Virginia Tech had their fourth losing season in the last 5 seasons. And Virginia Tech lost to number 13 South Carolina in Week 1. They're looking to exact revenge this week on Vanderbilt and get their season back on track.
Absolutely. And I think getting it back on track, but there's a lot of factors here that are tough for Virginia Tech. First, they're coming off a loss. Second, they really struggled on offense in that loss against a very good South Carolina defense, obviously top 15 team in the country. Third, you talk about this Vandy team and just what Diego Pavia and this team brings to the table, right? They pulled this upset. They beat Alabama, right? They were one of the stories, even though they were 7-6 at the end of it all, they were one of the stories of college football because, A, we don't see Vanderbilt do this very often, and B, it is an exciting team to watch, especially offensively, and they have a lot of pieces coming back. I'll tell you what, this is not a team I'm trying to play on. Actually, I should say, that was Sunday. They're on a day less rest.
Yeah.
And if there's a team or two in the country that I'm not trying to play with a rest disadvantage, well, Vanderbilt's one of them because they're going to come out running the football, too, with Pavia and Cedric Alexander.
So tell me more about the Vanderbilt offense with Diego Pavia, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and also Eli Stowers, who is, in our opinion, the best tight end in the country right now.
So, first of all, to recap what Vanderbilt's offense is, it is run-heavy, it's option-heavy, it's extremely creative with Pavia, with Cedric Alexander, and then just all the motions and looks and options and everything they can throw at you. But what the difference in this game was last year, look, Vandy's going to run the ball. We know they're going to run the ball. They're going to run it well against most teams. If Pavia ends up slicing you up with his arm, you're done. Then you have a major two-threat because the way he can throw the ball vertically so perfectly matches what they're trying to do on the ground. That was the case when he was at New Mexico State. That's what happened last year at Vanderbilt, and that's what happened in this game against Virginia Tech last year. Is that he was able to take shots downfield, and Virginia Tech, even with a great pass rush that had Aeneas Peebles and Antoine Powell-Ryland and multiple NFL players, they didn't get to him enough. And because they didn't get to him, he absolutely tore him apart. In a clean pocket last year, max 94.4 passing grade, 2 big-time throws, 12.5-yard average depth of target. Everything in this game, Diego Pavia did what he wanted to do. Between running the football, scrambling when he was pressured, I believe they only sacked him, I want to say, twice in this game. And he was able to he had room to take shots downfield. This is a vertical offense. It's Eli Stowers. It's Junior Sherrill. It's Trey Richardson, the transfer, I believe, from D2 Washburn. He's an interesting player to me, too, that I like the way they used him last week as well. They've got experience on both sides of the ball, but especially on this offense with all the core pieces coming back, I think the passing game could be even better. And Virginia Tech's pass rush last week was okay, but I didn't actually get the feel that it was. Last year, again, they had Peebles, who was one of the best in the country. Powell-Ryland, did he lead the country in sacks, I think he did last year? Or he was up there.
Yeah.
You have Ben Bell. You have some guys, obviously, up front. They did a decent job containing Lenora Sellers, but you got to bring Pavia down, man, because if you do get pressure, you got to make sure you make a tackle, and he's tough to tackle. And if you don't, and he has time to take those shots, he is a really good vertical passer. He beat them with his arm last year as well as his legs. If Vanderbilt's offense is two-dimensional, you have a major, major problem.
So I'm looking at Virginia Tech. Can their passing game be any more efficient than it was in Week 1 against South Carolina? because they only had negative 0.140 EPA per pass, their worst single game performance in a decade. Quarterback Kyron Drones completed just 43% of his passes, and Virginia Tech had a putrid 38.2 pass blocking grade as a team. The good news for the Hokies is that the Commodores' defense is not nearly as stingy as the Gamecocks one. Vanderbilt last year was 112th in the country in EPA per pass on defense, and they lost their two best players from that defense in that secondary in their safeties into Ricky Wright and CJ Taylor. Considering Vanderbilt was 40th in EPA per run last year, this game ultimately could come down to whether or not Kyron Drones can keep up with Diego Pavia.
Yeah, no, and that's a problem because if I'm Virginia Tech and I have their wide receivers who made a couple of nice plays last week, and Drones had 4 big-time throws but was generally pretty inaccurate. Look, if I'm Virginia Tech, I got to run the football. And in this game last year, they only ran for 101 yards. And against South Carolina, they had 3.6 per carry. So if I think Vanderbilt, I actually believe in the battle of quarterbacks. If you ask me, honestly, which one in this game am I more comfortable with throwing? It's Pavia. It's Diego Pavia. I really believe that. And I think the other day when Virginia Tech played South Carolina, they got into too many obvious passing situations. I think the wide receiver situation, the weapons on the outside are a question. Now, Aiden Green, Donovan Green, they played well. They both had over 70 yards, but I think a lot of it, if it's just chucking up go balls and taking your chances, don't love it. I don't love it. And you've mentioned how inefficient the passing game was, and what is it? Kyron Drones completed 43% of his passes.
Yeah.
You just can't. You can't have it. So Virginia Tech needs to run the ball better because Vanderbilt last year, underrated story. They stopped the run last year against Virginia Tech. They only gave up 100 yards on the ground. There's a lot of obstacles here for Virginia Tech, and part of it is their own issues. And I think you mentioned it, throwing the ball. They have to be better. They have to be better than they were against South Carolina.
They absolutely do. And I want to see Terrion Stewart get more touches in that offense too. I mean, that's a guy that we loved.
Did he get any? I don't know if he got.
We got to look at the.
He didn't get a single one. You got Marcellus Hawkins got 15. PJ Prelo got 5 for
Stewart
16.
Was a star.
Jeremiah Coney. Yeah, I mean, and look, it's just in general, it except for Kyron Drones, and he's got a great arm throwing go balls, that Virginia Tech offense did not feel explosive. Last year with Bashal Tutin, the run game felt explosive. You felt the speed. I don't know if they have a ton of speed on this team.
So he's actually hurt right now. That's why he didn't play. And they're encouraged by his process from his injury too. So he didn't play at all against South Carolina. So hopefully he's back this week against Virginia Tech. But that's a big return because I think that is pretty easily Virginia Tech's best running back if he's out there. I mean, he had like one of the highest forced tackle averages at Bowling Green that we've seen in PFF ever.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think he's a guy that definitely could make a huge difference for them. But really, that passing game is going to be a lot better, though, too. And I think it will be, Dawn. And we'll get into our predictions right now. Who's winning between Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech?
I think it should be better than against South Carolina because South Carolina was lights out on defense the other day, especially in run defense. But this game, I know they're at home, and I know it's a night game at Virginia Tech, and I know that's always fun, Sandman and all that stuff, right? But I just can't help but feeling like I didn't love the way Virginia Tech's offense looked the other day. And I know South Carolina's defense is better than Vanderbilt. And I'm telling you, on a one day less of rest against a physical team in South Carolina as well, I didn't see a ton of speed from Virginia Tech's offense. I didn't see the explosive ability. I still have my concerns about the receiving core and even Kyron Drones and just the consistency of their passing game. I feel like Vanderbilt, maybe obviously they're not the best team in the country, but I feel like I know what they are. And I don't think Pavia gives a damn what environment he's playing, and he's not afraid of anybody, right? I'm going to take Vanderbilt 27-23 on the road. I think they're going to get him again.
I got Virginia Tech winning at home, 28-27. I think Kyron Drones and this passing game will bounce back. I think Vanderbilt is a far, far worse pass defense than what South Carolina has this year, too. So I think Virginia Tech will bounce back this week. If Terrion Stewart can play, too, that would be huge, huge for them in week 2 because I think he is easily the best running back on that team. So I got Virginia Tech winning this one 28-27 and bouncing back after a loss to South Carolina.
You know what it was with the Hokies the other day, and they only scored 9 points on offense because they had the safety. Did it just never feel like they had like just a spark? It just never felt like there was that one play that just, okay, now we're getting rolling here. We got the moment. There was a couple of goal balls that were like super contested, but it just never felt like there was that one there was that 1 minute to just where you go, okay, they're getting it. Maybe that's the momentum shift, right? It felt like they need a spark from somebody to just make some game-changing play, like some explosive play, and it felt like it never happened the other day.
I will say the fact that they lost 24-11, but one of the touchdowns was a punt return too. So really, they were in that game with South Carolina.
Yeah,
so
their defense kept them in it. Absolutely. And it's a tough offense to play against with Sellers and all that, but it just felt like offensively, it just never got untracked. It just never did. And for their sake, you hope it does this week against Vandy. But again, this is a team they lost to last year and they struggled with last year.
So that wraps up our previews. I got Virginia Tech winning. Dalton's got Vanderbilt winning. And that final game preview. Really fun week two we got coming up. But, Dalton, before we go, I want to react quickly to the AP poll that just dropped. If you want to pull it up on your computer, too. Ohio State's number 1, Penn State's number 2, LSU 3, Georgia 4, Miami 5, Oregon 6, Texas 7, Clemson 8, Notre Dame 9, South Carolina 10, Illinois 11, Arizona State 12, Florida 13, Florida State 14, Michigan 15, Iowa State 16, SMU 17, Oklahoma 18, Texas A&M 19, Ole Miss 20, Alabama 21, Tennessee 22, Indiana 23, Texas Tech 24, and Utah 25. What stands out to you in the top 25?
I would, and I know we're big fans of them. I'd have Utah higher for what they did to UCLA. I would have Utah. I would have Utah higher. Alabama at 21. I know is the big story.
It's a little low. I get it.
I don't hate it. They shouldn't be off the rankings, but I'm not going to hate it.
I really, and I get, so I guess not one-to-one comparison with Notre Dame because they did beat Texas A&M week 1, but like Notre Dame didn't drop out of the top 25 after losing Northern Illinois.
No.
So like this is
No, Bama shouldn't drop out, but I'm not going to hate.
We saw some people yesterday being like, they absolutely do not deserve to be in the top 25.
No, they shouldn't drop. We shouldn't drop them out until if let's see them play Georgia.
Yeah.
Or if, God forbid, something happens in between there. But no, I thought there was a chance that LSU could be 2 ahead of Penn State, but they're leaving that. I thought there was a chance maybe Miami gets up to 4 ahead of Georgia.
I had Miami at 4.
I get that. I think you could very well be right on that. Clemson and Notre Dame both with not too far of a drop, especially losing close games. I don't hate that.
I would have Texas A&M higher. They're 19. I had them 13 in my ranking.
I agree with that, but I think they should have been higher to start with. Florida State at 14 as well.
Tennessee only at 22 feels a little off. It looked.
Were they unranked going into it?
No, they were 24.
Yeah, it should probably be a couple spots higher than too. I mean, that was pretty convincing.
You beat the mighty Syracuse Orange week 1.
Hey. Well, I forgot my stat to tell you. I have to tell you.
Oh, God, what is it?
All right, so I mentioned the whole rant. We'll get done after this, Eli. I mentioned the whole rant about how USF, they keep these games close, and you think even back to the bowl game 2 years ago when they beat Cuse 45-0. You know the most random stat of the day that I found? This is going back to the days of the Big East and USF and Cuse in the Big East. USF in their program history against Syracuse, 9-2. Love that. Just had to throw it in there. I didn't need that stat at all.
That was so unnecessary.
I didn't need that stat at all, but I just wanted to throw it in there. I'm taking it back to the Big East days. I just 9-2 against Syracuse. I'm like, that's pretty impressive right there.
Well, 2 years ago, the bowl game they played each other.
45-0.
Christmas. It was really close to Christmas.
Yeah.
My family and I were out to dinner. My brother and I weren't watching the game, and we just kept looking at our phone. It was like, oh, 7-0 USF. Okay, we'll bounce back. 21-0 USF. Okay. 42-0 USF. I was like, dude, what is going on in this game right now?
Pop quiz. You remember where that game was played, right?
Where was it?
FAU Stadium.
Oh, there you go.
You like that?
That's why Syracuse is so bad, because they took on the mantra of FAU.
Were they considered the home team in that game?
Probably.
That's rude.
So
that's why you lost 45-0.
It was that game was
just for that comment. We deserved it
because no quarterback played for Syracuse in that game. We had Dan Villari, the tight end, playing quarterback. And Kyle McCord's on the sidelines. And I was like, hopefully Kyle McCord does not flip his commitment right now. He's watching this like, what am I committed
to? I've never needed Kyle McCord more. But I just had to throw that stat in there because I forgot it while we were doing the preview. See that? I just get rolling on these things.
Whatever. All right. Well, listen, we got our review show coming up on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. on this channel, breaking down a lot of these games, if not all of them, and plenty more from what should be a really fun week 2. Not the last video this week, though, because later on, I believe on Thursday, we're dropping a video with the great Trevor Sikkema, PFF's lead draft analyst, breaking down his first big board for the 2026 NFL Draft. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss all of that. Coming out very soon, but our next live show will be Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, breaking down what should be a very, very fun week 2. For producers back there and Tyler and Eli, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys on Sunday morning, breaking down week 2.